Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the World Online Racing YouTube channel. Season 14 of this PC Tier 1 season is finally here, and we are getting underway at Brazil tonight. Normally towards the end of the season, but tonight we're flipping the script and we're going here first. My name is Dan Field, and I'm being joined, as always, by Luke Etheridge. Luke, how are you doing tonight?
I'm very well, thanks. Good evening, Dan. Good evening to everyone watching. Finally looking forward to getting the season underway, kicking off 2023. I'm just about old enough to remember in the real world where Brazil used to be right near the start of the season. So it's sort of going back to my childhood. But yeah, looking forward to seeing what the drivers can do. Slightly different grid. Some drivers returning to WOR. Some drivers getting their first chance in the top tier, either completely or first chance in the top tier as a full-time driver. And yeah, I think it should be a really competitive season.
Absolutely. Of course, normally sort of after the F1 esports season, some drivers decide to take a break, and then grids in league racing, they can take a drop. But I don't think that's the case here, because I think we have an insanely talented grid ahead of us this season, and we're going to have so much fun commentating over them. Some of the favourites from last season are here. Thomas Ronhar, we've got Alvaro Caraton, Shanaka Clay, the likes of them. We've also got a returning well, but I think one of the big names missing out here, unfortunately, is Jarno Opmeer. But Luke, with this competition underway, that means we are going to have a fight for a new champion.
Yeah, it is. Well, could have a fight for a new champion. There is a slight chance, if Nicolas Longue takes the title, that we could have our first ever multiple PC Tier 1 champion. Or, of course, if Jake Benham manages to emulate what he's done in Season 11 as well. I think other names that are going to stick out, we saw in the couple of races what he did last season, Barry Bowman, and we've seen that in F1 esports, always a top driver. Thomas Ronhar came so close to this title, came so close to the esports title, so interested to see what he can do as well. And then we've got, some of those non-esports drivers that put in really great performances last year. I mean, Ruben Pedreño wasn't out of the title really until the last couple of races. Alfie Butcher on his day can mix it with the best. Yeah, I think we've got a really talented grid. And also some of the reserve drivers that we're going to see as well. Chances are, if you're a reserve, you're going to get plenty of chances. And tonight, we've got the likes of Mirko Suriano, Max Wiesel, and then we've got esports names as well, like Luke Smith and Matthias van Erven. So yeah, really interesting grid. Really looking forward to seeing what they can get. Lucas and Jarno have said they might be making the odd appearances as the season goes on. And if they do, they could possibly not win the title, but certainly have a say in who is going to win it.
Absolutely, it is definitely going to be all up in the air. So much competition this season, and it is going to be incredibly exciting. I'm just trying to see who is in the lobby at the moment. We've got 16 drivers, so the drivers are heading in. And Luke, of course, we'll talk to Brazil last season. I mean, that was one of the most exciting races on the calendar, and arguably one of the most dominant Jarno Opmeer performances we have ever seen in his career. But I know one driver who is certainly going to be looking for vengeance tonight, and it is going to be Jake Benham, of course. Yeah,
didn't really have the greatest of luck at that last race in Brazil, and also, the other man that's on our screen at the moment alongside Jarno, Thomas Ronhar, he had a bit of a nightmare, really, in Brazil, and that's arguably the one that cost him the title, and we saw the Brazilian weather play a part. Who's to say that's not going to have an effect tonight? Just taking a quick look at the calendar there, quite a intense calendar, only really one break week for the drivers. Brazil this time around, then we're staying in the Americas, heading over to Kota next week. Azerbaijan, Baku always provides great action. Belgium, Hungary, Portugal, France, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, then a break. Abu Dhabi, Imola, China, Britain, Mexico, and Austria. April the 30th seems a long way away, but it'll be here before we know it. And judging by what we've seen from the last couple of seasons, there'll definitely still be a very interesting title battle by the time we get to the Red Bull thing.
Absolutely, I'm pretty sure like almost every I don't really remember all the way back to season 11, I believe it was, but I'm pretty sure ever since then, with of course the season prior to season 13, season 12, where Nicolas Longue was champion, and then Jarno Opmeer winning his title just like a month ago or something. Of course, they went to the final race, and I think it is going to be the exact same today this season. So it is going to be very exciting. Lots of action all the way up until April, which is sort of near the end of the game cycle. So who is realistically going to come out on top in F1 22? I have to wait and find out, and I hope everyone in the live chat is looking forward to the season getting underway. Let us know in the chat right now who you are going to be supporting in this season. And Luke, I'll throw the question to you. Early predictions: who's going to be the champion?
Ooh, that is a tough one. I think you're going to be brave to look past Ronhar, to be honest, just from the performances he was putting in last season as well. I think a lot of it is going to depend on how many races different people do. Like I said there, I think one half, we know he was very committed last season. I expect he's going to be there or thereabouts. I think Burmond, Longay, they're never going to be that far off either. So wouldn't surprise me if those three are up there towards the title. And yeah, we've got the likes, obviously, of, you know, Jake Benham, but he's not exactly slow, is he? You know, none of these drivers are slow, you can say. And they've had that bit of a break. They've had that bit of time off to not think after F1 Esports. So maybe there could be the odd little surprise at the start of the season as the drivers are trying to now get back into things now that WOR is starting, now that other leagues are starting. We'll get to see who's just sort of kept it up over the Christmas period.
Absolutely, of course, practice is very vital in F1 Esports, and I'm seeing there's a lot of support for a bunch of different drivers in the live chat at the moment. We've got Jay's live supporting Benham, but he thinks Ron Hart is just too fast. It is hard to look past that. Richie is looking towards Alfie Butcher and Josh Adowu, and I'm really excited to see Alfie Butcher if he does end up racing it a few points this season, because of course he is one of the up-and-coming stars in the F1 Esports scene. Someone's asking about Lucas. He's unfortunately not racing this season. As Luke previously mentioned, he might have a few races here and there, but I think after the season in F1 Esports he rightfully deserves a break, and that just means there's going to be a lot more questions, I suppose, on who is going to come out on top this time. But I'm just looking in the lobby at the moment. Seems we have 19 drivers in at this point. Two of them not in their cars. Jake Benham just got into his Mercedes, which means we're waiting for one Alfa Romeo. And if I'm not mistaken, Luke, that'd be Nicholas Longay that we're missing.
Yeah, I think he has just popped his way into the lobby, so it shouldn't be too long before we are able to get underway. For those who, you know, perhaps aren't familiar with WOR and how things work with the session layout, it's like you see in a lot of leagues that have the esports drivers that have the top tiers. It's full qualifying and then a 50% race, and the qualifying will be extremely intense. It will be extremely close, especially around a track like Brazil, one of the shortest tracks on the calendar. I think it might only be Zandvoort and, of course, Monaco. That is shorter, so tight, so easy to make mistakes as well. So even though it's short, yes, that means you've got a bit more time to get multiple laps in, but, you know, wouldn't be surprised if drivers are 2-3 tenths off the fastest and getting knocked out in this first qualifying session. I think I'm agreeing with what a lot of people are saying in the chat. Ron Hart's going to be there, Benham's going to be up there, and I'm possibly agreeing with Richie, if I'm being honest. If I had to pick a non-esports driver to watch out for this season, I think Alfie Butcher would probably be the one, and we're not going to be too far away from finding out if our predictions are correct.
Absolutely, of course. We are about to head into Q1, of course, the 18-minute session where the bottom 5 are eliminated. The top 15 advance into Q2, and then the top 10 from that session advance in the shootout for pole position. But Luke, I think we're about ready to get trackside, and already I'm seeing a retirement from one of McLaren's. That's Will Lewis, a winner in PSGL just this week, and he's having a fantastic season. He doesn't want to qualify tonight, it seems, and he is going to be taking this one right from the back of the grid. So that means already we have a driver who we know is going to be...
Yeah, it's sort of taken the pressure off, I suppose, some of the drivers. So that's 4 where we're going to see getting eliminated. And already Luke Smith now and Preshnader and Visa joining him, the traditional, doing the installation lap on the set of the intermediate tyres. And I think it is Philip Preshnader who's actually going to be one of the first drivers heading out of the pit lane. You see this all the time. They just want to make sure everything's working. They don't want to waste a set of soft tyres that they are going to use later. And that is going to be a crucial thing in this session, in this first qualifying, and in the second one as well. If you can get through on only using one set of the soft tyres, it is going to put you in such good stead for the final qualifying session, just because you'll be able to get more runs in. But you don't want to get too cocky, and you don't want to get caught out thinking that you're fast enough, and then finding yourself qualifying right at the back of the grid.
Absolutely, there is you know, the driving game is a mind game, so these drivers have got to, you know, be confident in their ability to get through on that one set. But if they're overconfident here and they make one slight mistake somewhere along the way, they're going to have to come into the pits. They can't have that same level of arrogance, so we'll have to wait and see. But it is Luke Smith, the first out on circuit in the Williams tonight, and we'll see what he can do. Obviously, this is just on a set of the intermediate tyre, so there's no real need for us to properly go through this lap and talk through it all. But Luke, I'm just so excited to be back. Of course, all these drivers, well rested and ready for this season of WOR. But I think us as well. We've had quite a nice break, and it's going to be good to get back in here.
Yeah, it's nice to have a little bit of a break and just get sort of back to normal. So looking forward to seeing what everyone can do. It did throw me a tiny little bit. I've got to be honest, seeing Luke Smith in the Williams did just confuse me for a tiny bit. But yeah, he's reserving tonight in the place of Shinaka Clay, who is unable to make it tonight. But we'll see what Luke can do. You don't want to do anything silly at the moment. You don't want to get caught out on a set of the intermediate tyres and make a slight mistake around this circuit. And Brazil's always been a circuit that I've really enjoyed. It always seems to provide, fairly exciting racing in real life. Of course, this season, well, 2022, last season, I suppose you could say, in the real world. So Mercedes get their only win of the season, and George Russell get his first win in Formula One. And I just feel like the layout seems to provide great action. You've got that incredibly long flat-out section coming out of Youngsao, where Smith is coming out of now, all the way down towards the Senna S, very undulating pit straight, DRS zone there, and then if you don't get it done, you've got a chance down the Retta Aposta with DRS as well, in towards Decido del Lago, and that middle sector, it's tight, it's twisty, it's technical. If you get stuck behind a slower car there in the race, could really ruin your strategy.
Yeah, and of course we saw that from the likes of, I can't remember off the top of my head who it was. I think it might have been Thomas Ronhard getting caught behind some of the runners on the wet tyres when he'd swapped over to the Inters, or maybe it was some other drivers further up the order. I believe Luke Smith was actually involved in that. He took pole position last time we were here in season 13. But if I remember correctly, his race didn't really amount to much. So we'll have to wait and see. He definitely does know his way around the circuit. And so far, of all the intermediate runners, he is the quickest. We are just waiting. It's around about the 10-minute mark is when drivers decide to come out on a set of these slick tyres. So we've still got a few more minutes of just watching these guys on their cool-down laps. Boulem Farah, I believe he was in F2, in Tier 2 last season. I'm going to have a quick check on my screen here, and yeah, he was in last season Tier 2. He had a good few wins, 3 wins, and he did 4 less races than everyone else, who's still within 25 points of Jeffrey Ritchie, the eventual winner of that championship. So Luke, this driver is certainly one to look out for.
Yeah, he is. In fact, I believe he actually won the race here in Brazil last season in Tier 2. Couldn't quite, like you said, win the title, but certainly one to watch out for. It was Jarno Opmeer who took the victory here in season 13. What was the penultimate race? It was Mirko Soriano who got second place, and he's in the Ferrari tonight, so looking forward to see what he can do. And Antoine de Zaleski, a bit of a classic name from the Xbox era of WOR, he got a third place around here, just taking advantage of the strategy and taking advantage of the weather conditions, and we could end up seeing that later on. But at the moment, they're just thinking about getting through this qualifying session, and we've only seen 4 drivers even attempt an installation lap on the intermediates. It's Smith, Preschneider, Bianca Lila, and Max Wiesel, the only drivers that have done that at the moment. I think we're now going to hit a bit of a lull period, and you'll see the drivers starting to come out soon. Like you said, it's normally around 10-minute mark, but they might, if they're feeling a bit confident, might leave it a bit later. Being such a short lap, we're already seeing 70-second lap times, and that's on a set of the intermediates. Of course, they're going to be able to go a good few seconds quicker once they go onto that red set of the soft tyres. And I believe I heard a rumour this week in the real world of Formula 1 that they're going to trial at a couple of races this season, forcing the teams to use hard tyres in Q1, medium tyres in Q2, and soft tyres in Q3. So some of the teams that aren't the best at warming up their tyres could have a bit of a nightmare at a few races.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that rule change there. And hopefully, if the trials go badly, then we don't see it, because that is a little bit of a questionable change, I would think, in Formula 1. Got 12 minutes left in this Q1 session. Only 4 drivers with a lap time on the board at the moment. Of course, they were set on the intermediate tyres. We're just waiting for drivers to come out onto the circuit. We've got 329 live viewers at the moment. If you are enjoying, make sure, if you haven't already, to subscribe to the WOR YouTube channel. It's the big red button beneath this stream. You cannot miss it. And whilst you're there, leave a like. We've got 35 so far at the moment, so every little bit is appreciated. And Luke, I'm just so excited to be back here. I mean, I'm already, I don't know, I'm just getting a little bit giddy thinking about it. We've got 11 minutes left to go, everyone. Let us know, actually, where you are from in the live chat, being World Online Racing. I'd like to think that all of our viewers, Luke, are going to be worldwide. I know that you, I'm not too sure actually where you're from. I think you're from Yorkshire.
I am from Yorkshire. That is correct. Good old Doncaster, or bad old, but I'm allowed to say that. I'm from there, so yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where everyone's from tonight, and that's what I love about sim racing, all these sort of esports. Is it gives people an opportunity to race against others that they're not normally be able to. I mean, just looking on the screen at the moment, you can just see there if we hide the UI, you've got Pradcic from Poland, Parnell from Germany, Josh Edo, the Welsh wizard in the Red Bull, Donoso from Chile. We've got Mirko Soriano, Italian, other drivers down there, Boulem Ferrer, Algerian as well. We've got such a wide mix of talent around here. And, who knows where the stars of the future are going to come from as well. You'll be able to see the PC tiers coming in later in the week as well. And also this week as well, something new for Season 14. There is not an Xbox and a PS tier anymore. There are mixed crossplay console tiers. You might have seen a couple of the crossplay events with the best from the PlayStation going up against the best of the Xbox in one-off events on WOR and PSGL. But yeah, it could be really interesting to see how that works and to see if anyone can get close to Otis Lawrence, of course, in that side of things, as someone is finally starting to head out onto the circuit with just under 10 minutes remaining.
It's Duncan Hoffland, and right on cue, I'd say. As soon as the 10-minute mark hits, drivers decide to come out of the pit lane. And of course, we were talking about how all the drivers, they come from all over the world. But one place does seem to breed some Formula One esports talent, and that is, of course, the Netherlands. Heralding from here is, of course, Duncan Hoffland, two-time F1 esports champion. Jarno Olmir, and Season 14 WOR champion, of course he is, and of course Thomas Ronhart from the Netherlands at 2. It seems like they've got a knack for Formula One, those Dutchmen, and we'll see what Duncan Hoffland can do here, as it's sort of like the floodgates opening. Of course, once one driver comes out, everyone else decides to come out of the pit lane. We've got Ferrari, that's Mirko Soriano exiting the pit lane, Max Wiesel to come out circuit, Liam Parnell, Manuel Biancolila. So we're going to have a lot of action here. But for the moment, let's hope he doesn't catch any traffic as he begins his first flying lap with 8 minutes to go. Duncan Hoffland through Jun Sao and opening up DRS. He's going to begin his lap of this Interlagos circuit.
Yeah, making his way now, up towards the centre S, braking in between that 150-metre board, nice and steady through the first part, but don't get too greedy. You bounce over the curve there through the long curve of Assault, turn number 3, hugging towards the left-hand side initially on that part of the straight. DRS open again as you come down the rest of the Foster into, I think, one of the trickiest corners on the track, Decido de Largo. You see plenty of drivers get it wrong through there, through the double left-hander of 4 and 5, and now up the hill through Ferrajova, a little jab on the brakes through there, flat out through the second part, and now we're really into the twisty middle sector of this circuit. Got to be careful, got to make sure that you're not too greedy on the throttle. You won't see the drivers at all really touching the throttle in the bottom 3 gears. Really don't want to cause any wheel spin. That little short shift through Pico de Pato by Duncan Hoffland, through Miguelio, and now into arguably the most important corner of the track. Young Zhao, and he has got an absolute faceful of an Alpine there. He is not going to be too happy about that one whatsoever. Definitely hesitated a bit, I think, more than anything with that. So yeah, Duncan Hoffland, first lap of the session, 107.350. Definitely more time to come from him. He'll be annoyed with how that ended.
Yeah, I don't think he'd be too happy with how that lap has gone. I believe next up to cross line will be Mirko Soriano in his Ferrari, and we'll see where he can go alongside Duncan Hoffland. Will he be able to jump his former PlayStation compatriot now on the PC platform? And no, he won't. It's a 107.415. Up next will be Max Wiesel, another driver from the PlayStation platform. And no one can go quicker than Duncan Hoffland, despite the fact that Hoffland did have some traffic in the way. Liam Parnell has gone into P4, P5 for Manuel Biancolila. There it is, to the top of the order. Boulem Ferrer making his Tier 1 debut in WOR Season 14, Round 1. He's gone to the top of the order ahead of Luke Smith now, who jumps into second position, a 1 minute 7.339, so only 300ths off of the back of the McLaren driver at the top of the order. Up next is going to be one of the Mercedes, I believe that is Jake Benham coming towards the line. There it is, the first man into 1 minute 7.2s. It is Jake Benham, your Season 11 champion, at the top of the order, looking for his second title on the PC, and I'd love to see him have his fight right back at the top again.
Yeah, definitely. He had a good few races last season, just couldn't quite have that consistency as Longue becomes the first man to get into the 107.1s around here. I think it's certain we are going to see 106s by the time we're possibly even in the next qualifying session. Never mind Q3 as Fabrizio Donoso just 14 thousandths of a second slower than Elongate, a third of the session remaining. And yeah, I was surprised Duncan managed to stay on top for that long. He's down into 7th for now. Well, 8th place. Actually, I think we've just seen that was, I think, Josh Edo shoving himself in towards 4th place. Qualifying's arguably been Duncan's weakness over the last few seasons, but he really seems to have stepped it up in recent times and really seems to be improving on that side of his game. So looking forward to seeing what he can do, and I think we're all looking forward to seeing what his compatriot can do. Thomas Ronhart in the Haas was so good in his debut F1 esports season, came so close to taking the title, but in the end it was Lucas Blakely who did that, of course, came so close to taking the WOR title. Couldn't quite manage that in the end, but what can he do here? Can he get in and around that 107.1 mark that Longate and Donoso have done at the moment, as the Haas car makes its way past the grandstands on the right-hand side, cutting that pit line as much as you're allowed to do. Thomas Ronhart towards the line, 107.149. He goes fastest of everyone. And I've just seen a message in the chat. Do you guys race as well as commentating? We do race occasionally. Certainly nowhere near the pace of these guys, though.
Yeah, I was going to say we do race. Not very good, though, unfortunately. I mean, we try our best, but no, I can never compete with any of these guys. Thomas Ronhart going to the top of the order, and he's coming to this season with a vengeance. And of course, Jarno Opmeer is not here to deny him. So could this be the season where we see Thomas Ronhart just absolutely flourish throughout the entirety of it? He's off to a good start. Of course, I believe he didn't actually qualify here last season. I think he's learning from his mistakes, because that race ended up terribly for him. So he's gone to the top of the order ahead of Nicholas Longay. Fabrizio Donoso in third position at the moment. It's a very close grid so far. The bottom 5, however, at the moment: Tomek Parajic, Jack West, Manuel Biancalila, Matthijs van Erven, and of course Will Lewis. That hasn't he retired before the session really even got underway. And I think the big surprise that is in that bottom 5 is, of course, Tomek Parajic. We really would expect him to be towards the top 5, top 3 of this grid, and I hope for his sake that he's going to be able to put on a better lap than that.
Yeah, I think he'll have been expected, of course, as he was a man who was challenging for the title in Season 12 when he was alongside Longay at the Alfa Romeo squad. I think he'd have been expected a bit more than that at the moment, but there's still time to go. We've seen Ronhart, Longay, and also, perhaps a bit surprisingly, Josh Edu call it a day in this session. I mean, Josh is only at 0.16 seconds ahead of Parajic at the moment. Yes, they'd need a lot of drivers to improve, but we're going to see track evolution. Probably only, 100th of a second per corner, and all of a sudden, if everyone finds that, Josh could find himself in a tiny bit of trouble. So we'll see whether that gamble he has taken is going to pay off, and if it is going to pay off, he's going to look pretty good later on. Looking at the times from Manuel Biancalila and Matthijs van Erven, looks like they didn't quite get as clean a laps as I think they would have expected there. It sounds crazy to say this, but they're a long way off in terms of league racing off the rest of the pack. They're a whole quarter of a second behind Jack West at the moment, and they're only 6.5 tenths of a second off the fastest time, but that is, in league racing, especially at this level, that is a great gaping chasm to be behind another driver.
Yeah, absolutely, and they really do have to pull it out of the bag. At the moment, we have Alvaro Caraton and a whole heap of other drivers from 7th downward coming out onto the circuit for their second flying laps here, and Caraton been a bit quiet so far in this session, currently P11 with a 1 minute 7.372. We'll see what the Spaniard can do. Didn't really set the F1 esports world alight in the most recent season of F1 esports. We'll have to wait and see how he copes here today in Brazil as he heads down in towards the Cida de Lago and in towards the Retro Aposta. Now off the exit towards Ferradura. Of course, we saw Jake Benham have his incident with Manuel Biancalila, I believe it was, that took the young all-star, as George Morgan likes to call him, out of the race, and really did put a dampener, I'd say, in his spirits. As in towards now the second sector, very twisty through here. You have to keep your wits about you through here, but Alvaro Caratoni's taking this very methodically, very nicely indeed. He's not taking too many risks. We'll see what he can do as he heads in towards the third sector, up by 1.5 tenths now out of the exit of Junsao. It's going to be foot flat to the floor, through here and up towards the line. What can Caraton do as he opens up the DRS, hugging that inside line right towards the wall? Where can the Spaniard go? Can he go into P1? Not quite. P2 for Alvaro Caraton, but Luke, I would say that is good enough for him to advance into Q2.
Yeah, certainly, and that just shows that there is a lot of time to be found out there on the circuit. Jack West's gone up in towards 5th place. Thomas Paradzic puts himself in towards 7th, as well as Duncan Hoffland. That's a much better lap from him. Goes in towards 3rd. Manuel Biancalila at the moment, he comes across the line there. Does improve time-wise, but not position-wise. So I think that's one driver that we can safely say is out of this session. We're not going to be seeing Manuel Biancalila doing anything, and I don't think we'll be seeing Matthias van Erven do anything as well, because unless I'm very much mistaken, he's made a mistake coming out of Jacida de Largo. We have got yellow flags at the moment, so I can't quite see what time is left on the board, but I think he might just... No, in fact, no, he's not going to have enough time, so that's Matthias van Erven out of this session as well. If I was Josh Edu, I'd be looking over my shoulder at the moment, feeling a bit nervous, because he only, needs a couple of drivers to find improvements. And I'd say another shock down there at the bottom of the order is the man who's just spun on screen there, Tom Manley, 17th place.
Oh, I think, you know what? I believe that Josh Adowu can be safe here as the clock has struck 0. We do have a few drivers in that bottom 5 on lap times at the moment. Boulem Farah just slightly down on his previous best. It is going to be Liam Parnell in 16th position at the moment, as we got a hash car spun off to the right hand side. That is Matai. Put it in the wall somewhere along there, but here comes Liam Parnell to the line. He can't improve. He's going to stay in 16th position. Boulem Farah just about surviving at the moment, unless Manuel Biancalila has anything to say about it, but he's going to peel off into the pit lane. Of course, we saw Tom Manley have his spin. That is a big surprise, I'd say, to see Tom Manley, a multiple-time podium sitter in the last season of WOR in season 13, eliminated in Q1. Josh Adowu, we thought it was overconfident for him to retire when he was in about 6th position. Everyone behind him was improving, but he just about managed to survive in P14. That's I'd say, a big sigh of relief is going to be coming from his cockpit there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think he'll be, happy that Matthias didn't find that improvement. I don't think Tom Manley actually found any improvement on his second run either. And Tom was a man last season, alongside Ruben, alongside Lucas and Thomas Ronhart as well, that they tended to do it in one lap in Q1. You'd never need to see them go out onto the circuit again for a second lap. So, that's a bit surprising at the moment. I think definitely to see him down there. Ruben Pedreño, I might have expected to see a bit more than him, but I don't think anyone's really surprised to see who's at the top of the timings charts in that session. Only needed one lap. And Thomas Ronhart doing enough to take the fastest time in Q1. Alvaro Caraton in 2nd, Duncan Hoffland 3rd, Longue Donoso in 4th and 5th. But most importantly, your bottom 5 in that session: Liam Parnell, Tom Manley, Manuel Biancalila, Matthias van Erven, and Will Lewis. And I said before the session, if you're 2 or 3 tenths off pole position, off the fastest, you could find yourself losing out. Liam Parnell and Tom Manley were within 2 tenths of the fastest time, but they'll still be taking no further part in qualifying.
I mean, just look at these gaps. Philip Presnader outside the top 10 and in 11th, not even a tenth off the top of Thomas Ronhart's time of a 1 minute 7.149. Insanely close gaps here in WOR PC Tier 1 here in Season 14. I cannot wait for this season to really get underway, and I think this is the perfect start. So we've lost 5 drivers. Q2 is about to come up, of course, a 15-minute session to determine the top 10 who will be fighting it out for pole position. And Luke, I'm really looking forward to this session, and I just can't wait for this race to get underway.
Oh, yeah, certainly. I mean, I think we've seen those names that we expected to be there or thereabouts straight away. Longue and Ronhart coming out the traps, 107.1s. Donoso didn't have the greatest of F1 esports season. Of course, he's no longer at the Ferrari esports team, so I think trying to keep himself in the shop window, because we know certainly what a talented driver he can be. But yeah, Q2 now getting underway, and again, bottom 5 drivers will be eliminated from this session, leaving us with the top 10 shootout, which will be starting in just over 15 minutes time.
Yeah, but for now, we just have to get through this session, and normally when we see the beginning of Q2, it means drivers are just setting their banker times on a scrub set of tyres, just to save that 1 extra soft for a potential extra run in Q3, which means we're not going to really see any world beaters of times, I'd imagine, for at least the first maybe 6 or 7 minutes in this Q2 session. We are not going to see any 1 minute sixes, but I do think, Luke, in this session, if not here, definitely in Q3, we're going to see maybe 1 or 2, maybe even 3 1 minute sixes. So be tuned for that. At the moment, it is Nicholas Longue, the first out on circuit. The 2 Alfa Romeos. Normally, we do actually see them come out quite early, and they are living up to that name. I believe it was a few seasons ago. I think when it was Longue and Tomac Perez, I think season 12 it was, where they were always the first 2 to come out on circuit. And it's good to see that Max Wiesel still living up to that Alfa Romeo name. But here it is, Longue beginning his lap of this Interlagos circuit as he heads in towards the Senna S's.
Yeah, well, looks like he's on a scrubbed set of tyres at the moment. Well, he might be. Of course, he only did 1 lap in Q1, so might be going straight out on a set of the new tyres as well. And Longue certainly pushing hard, the Frenchman, at the moment. And it is interesting how it always seems to be Alfa Romeo that were the first drivers heading out. I remember last season, even when it was Carter-Lundy and Will Lewis racing for Alfa Romeo, they always wanted to be the first drivers out there on track. You can pretty much guarantee that Carter especially would be one of the first, impatient to get out there and wanting to, yes, track's not going to be at the best, but wanting to take advantage of that clear air as Longue making his way through this very, as I said, it's a fiddly part of the circuit. The aero doesn't really work too well, especially on these modern Formula 1 cars at these speeds. He's just relying on the pure grip from these extremely wide Pirelli tyres that were, of course, introduced in 2017, and then the lower profile 18-inch wheels that we saw introduced for the 2022 season as Nicholas Longue heads towards the finish line. What time is it going to be from him? 1:07.278. Very nice indeed from Longue, but I think he's going to need more than that. He wants to guarantee that he's going to be safe and into the top 10 later on. Hofland and Wiesel a bit further off, confirming what we expected, that they are on a used set of tyres.
Yeah, if this is a used set of tyres for Nicholas Longue, it is a very impressive time, but as you said, it could be a fresh set, given that he only did 1 lap in Q2. I guess we'll have to see what Thomas Ronhaar can do. Of course, only doing 1 lap as well. We'll have to wait and see. He's in that final sector now as we've got a few more drivers crossing the line. Alvaro Carreton has gone into P6 as a Mercedes coming into the pit lane. The McLaren of Boualem Ferro is going to cross the line now to go into P5. We'll see what Thomas Ronhaar can do in his Haas, of course, challenging for that title very valiantly last season. Unfortunately wasn't able to capture the glory, and this race, the Brazilian Grand Prix, arguably was the undoing of that. So can he redeem himself here tonight? He's in P3 with a 1:07.525, and that pretty much confirms that is a scrub set of the tyre. With 11 minutes to go left in this session, drivers now headed back into the pit lane. Currently, it is Nicholas Longue leading the way with a 1:07.278. Fabrizio Donoso in second, Thomas Ronhaar third, Duncan Hofland in fourth. He was very impressive in that Q1 session. I think he came P3 in the end, P4 so far in Q2. This could be the making of the Dutchman. I'm really looking forward to how he can do.
Yeah, I think since he's become an Aston Martin development driver, learning from some of the great drivers that they had in that team across last season, he's been able to adapt. And I said his qualifying form, I became used to commentating on Duncan, seeing him in other leagues. He'd qualify outside the top 10 and then somehow pop in and around the podium. But over a season, you can't keep doing that, and you're going to have the odd race where you'll get caught out, you'll get sort of, I always think you get squeezed in sort of that slinky-like nature. If you're in the middle of the pack, you've got everyone at the front slowing down a bit earlier and everyone on the back trying to make places, and you find yourself getting caught up in incidents. But very good job in Q1 to get third place. I think if he hadn't have been blocked by that Alpine, we'd have probably seen his first lap be good enough to get through to Q2. And that's a very nice lap time on a scrubbed set of tyres as the track gets very quiet now with 10 minutes to go. I think it won't be as quiet as it was, well, for as long as it was earlier on in Q1. I think we'll be seeing a few more drivers head out onto the circuit because barring Longue, and I think it's safe to say that that was possibly on a new set of tyres, barring Longue, I've not really seen what anyone can do in anger in this Q2 session, and Presneda, Benham and Ido, not seen anything at all from them yet.
Absolutely, and I think it'd be a big loss to see all those 3 drivers going out. Of course, I think Philip Presneda was a winner last season, if I'm not mistaken, and indeed he was. The Belgian Grand Prix, Philip Presneda was able to take a victory. Of course, Jake Benham was fighting for the championship for a good few races. I think he fell off slightly towards the end. I think actually the Brazilian Grand Prix, where he was unfortunately taken out of that race That was the one that knocked him out of contention. Of course, Josh Adowu coming into this season. He didn't have many appearances in the last season of WOR. We only saw him until for the first 3 rounds. Then he just disappeared. So I think it'd be a big loss to see all 3 of those drivers going out this early in the session. They've all got something to prove here tonight. But Duncan Hofland is the first out on circuit. He just come back in immediately, strapped on fresh set of the tyres, and now he's headed through Magulio. He's going to begin his lap here and out of Jun Sao. He's got to get this exit absolutely perfect, because this is going to make or break his run down this start finish straight. And here we'll see what he can do as he's now picking up the speed. It doesn't seem like he's pushing it all too hard. And Duncan Hofland, Luke, he's coming back into the pit lane.
Yeah, I was wondering whether he was going for the second warm-up lap, which is quite a common feature to see from different drivers on this game, where they do a second warm-up lap, burn off a bit more fuel, just get a bit of a feeling for the tyres, and then go all out on that second run. But no, Duncan clearly not happy with something, so he's heading straight back into the pit. Someone who is going out there in Angolo is the Ferrari, the runner-up from this race last season, Mirko Suriano, making his way in towards the first sector at the moment. He's already nearly a 10th up on his personal best, but this is where you're really going to start to see the time get gained from their scrub tyres ones. But that little bit of a wobble through Decido de Largo, and that is Mirko Suriano also deciding that he's not really happy with how things are going at the moment. So the proper start of Q2, the start of everyone on their new tyre runs, few drivers finding it tricky.
Yeah, we'll see if Alvaro Carreton is able to get his lap down. And so far, he's just about to finish this second sector, and he's looking quite nice on this lap. So we'll see what he can do as he heads through Magulio and up towards Jun Sao, currently at 5/10 up on his previous best lap. If he has a good final sector here, Luke, we could see the first runner into the 1-minute 6s, as here he comes, opening up that DRS and hugging it to that inside line. We'll see what he can do. Alvaro Carreton towards the line now, just about a 1-minute 7.061. Not quite the 1-minute 6 so far, but I'd say a very nice time from Alvaro Carreton there. His fellow countryman, Bruno Pedreño, briefly jumped in second. Jack West took that off him, and then Jake Benham comes in towards P2. So already a lot of times are coming out here. We've got Nicholas Longay out on circuit, but it's going to be Max Wiesel coming up towards the line next in that Alfa Romeo. Jumps ahead of his teammate. We got one of the Mercedes cars, that's Tomek Paradzic, up in towards P6. The Red Bull now of Josh Adowu towards the top of the order. He's able to get ahead of Alvaro Carreton, jumping himself right out of that bottom 5, and I would say, Luke, into safety.
Yes, certainly. Nicholas Longay there, he can only go up in towards 5th place. And Thomas Ronhar, we knew it was coming at some point. First man to get into the 106s. I mean, 0.12 seconds faster than everyone else. That is a message from the young Dutchman. Ronhar fastest of everyone. Josh Edo in second, Carreton third, Benham, West, Longay, Pedreño, Smith, Paradzic, and Wiesel. The other drivers that would be going through at the moment, and Buell and Feather's time would have been comfortably safe in Q1. Not going to be enough in Q2, and I'm just wondering what the chat think. What is the cut-off time going to be if you were Nicholas Longay at the moment? How safe would you be feeling on that 107.086? I mean, he's less than half a tenth of a second off of second place, but he might just be looking over his shoulder a tiny bit in that. Prejnader's still yet to set a time. Hofland and Suriano, of course, backed off their laps. Suriano did do a second run, but only good enough for 11th place. And there could be a few more improvements from those outside the bottom, well, outside the top 10.
Absolutely, and I do believe that Fabrizio Donoso, he might actually be on a push lap here. He's currently down in 14th position, opening up that DRS and headed towards the line in his Ferrari car. What can the Chilean do? And he's going to go up into P2. He's I'm losing my words here. 1-minute 7.004, so he's just 4 thousandths off of a 1-minute 6 there, but he gets himself, I would say, comfortably into the next session. That leaves the bottom 5 of Philip Prejnader, Max Wiesel, Mirko Suriano, Bulem Ferrer, and Duncan Hofland backing off on his lap. Duncan Hofland really does need to get into gear here. I'm not too sure what went wrong. He just sort of he didn't even go for his lap. He came right back into the pit lane. Maybe he didn't fit. Maybe he didn't fit on the correct set of tyres. And I'm not too sure, if I'm being honest. But we all know now he's got 4 minutes to get back out on circuit and then set this lap time. Can he get in towards the next session. We'll have to know. I'm trying to think what will the what will be the cutoff time. I would say, Luke, that Nicholas Longay is safe on that 1 minute 7.086. I think there's a decent enough gap between himself and Ruben Pedreno, and maybe a few drivers will mess up on their laps. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, this is such an unpredictable grid. Really, anything can happen. Thomas Ronhaar feels safe at the top of the order. I would if I was him as well. He has decided to retire the car. We will not be seeing the Haasman back out on circuit, but I'm seeing activity down at the Aston Martin garage, and it would not surprise me if that is Duncan Hoffland coming out onto the track.
Yeah, I think unsurprising that Duncan's gone out a bit earlier on. Likewise with Bourlain-Ferrer trying to get a clean lap in. The only driver, I think, on this grid that has raced in WOR before and didn't race in the top tier last season. So this is all a bit new for him. He's got through the first part of qualifying. He's going to need to find at least 1.5 tenths of a second. I think he's possibly going to have to get up there round about the 107.08 mark, where we've got Jack West and Nicholas Longay at the moment. I'm not surprised whatsoever that Thomas Ronhaar is the only car that is retired from this session. I think everyone else is just going to be feeling a bit nervous at the moment. Even Donoso, Ido and Caraton. If there's some big improvements from those further back, you might just see them getting into a little bit of trouble, and this could be the man who could make them feel very nervous indeed. The Algerian Bourlain-Ferrer. Let's see what his time is as he comes through the first sector split at the moment. He's currently down by 32 thousandths of a second, and another driver to get a massive wobble through Decido de Largo, unsurprisingly abandoning that lap.
He's still got more time to charge up the battery, then go once again if he has the fuel. I don't see why not. Meanwhile, Duncan Hoffland just beginning on his lap now, so we'll see what the Dutchman can do as he crosses the start-finish line. Currently down in 15th position as he heads in towards the Senna S's and up towards Curva del Sol, where you need a good exit through here, keeping it tight to the inside line, opening up the DRS and down the Retroposta now towards Decido de Largo, braking at around about the 75-meter mark, kissing the apex on the inside and running it out wide through turn number 5. Then it's going to be the incline up towards Ferradura corner, braking late up through here. Of course, he will have to wait and see how he does. He didn't back off in his previous best lap. He didn't even start his previous lap. As in towards now Pinarino. This is a very tricky part of this circuit. You have to be very careful on the throttle. Lockups very easy through there. Duncan Hoffland's done well to avoid them, as now through Magulio and up towards Jun Sao, where he's 4 tenths up on his previous best lap, and if he has a good final sector. Of course, he was blocked through Jun Sao on his previous attempt, so I think this will be the blistering time that we are expecting from the Dutchman as he now heads up towards the line. Where can Duncan Hoffland go? Only P7, Luke Etheridge. That might not be safe. He's 1/10 shy of Jack West and 1,000th clear, of Nicholas Longay.
Yeah, Jack West, he's feeling a lot safer now. He becomes the second man to get into the 106s, and I think Nicholas Longay, he's going to become the third man at the moment. More than a 10-foot through the second sector. Longay towards the line. 106.914. That is the fastest time from him. Max Wiesel goes in towards 5th place at the moment. Pedreño, he's unable to improve. Tomasz Paracic also not finding any time on that lap. What can Jake Benham, his teammate, do as he comes towards the line? Puts himself in towards 4th place. The times are coming down thick and fast at the moment. Bourlain-Ferrer goes up into 9th. And you were right, Duncan Hoffland's not going to be feeling very safe because all of a sudden, he's right on the bubble.
Yeah, and absolutely. He's been put down into that bottom 5 by Bourlain-Ferrer, and he's in towards P10. Duncan Hoffland is not going to have an opportunity to go again here. I think Ruben Pedreño and Tomasz Paracic, they are both pushing again, but we do, with the clock, has struck 0. Josh Adowu just crossed the line there with a 1 minute 6.949. Up next towards the line, it is going to be Hoffland, but of course not on a push lap. He'll be peeling off into the pit lane. His day is done. Jack West, P4, a solid effort in this qualifying, and I think we'll definitely be seeing him through. I think we're just going to have to look out for the likes of Pedreño and Paracic as here they come up towards the line. The Spaniard fighting for the championship until the final breath last season, and he can only go into P10. Can Paracic be the man to put him out of this session? No, he cannot. Tomasz Paracic eliminated from qualifying. Luke Smith is out. He's invalid on his lap. Mirko Soriano is pushing. Can he knock out Boulem Farah as he comes up towards the line? What can he do? It is going to be Soriano to the line. P13 is all he can muster. And, Boulem Farah was knocked out somewhere along the road there. I think I might have been reading it all wrong. My eyes are getting old, I suppose. But your bottom 5 in this qualifying session: Boulem Farah, Duncan Hoffland, Mirko Soriano, Luke Smith, and Tomek Perejic.
Yeah, such a close qualifying session. I mean, Mirko Soriano, less than a tenth of a second slower than his teammate for tonight, Donoso. Donoso 6th and comfortably through into an X-Pop qualifying session. Mirko Soriano, he's going to be starting outside the top 6 rows of the grid. 13th place for the Italian driver. Feather, Hoffland, Soriano, Smith, and Perejic, the ones not making it through in that session. But Nicholas Longay on that second run, finding the time he needed. He went fastest. I think you're going to be a brave man to bet against Ron Hall, though. Again, only needed 1 lap. He was fastest in Q1, second fastest in Q2. He's got plenty of fresh rubber to use in the final 12 minutes of qualifying.
Absolutely, and here is your Q2 order. Nicholas Longay at the top of the order. Thomas Ronhar in P2, P3 for Josh Adowu, Jack West 4th, 5th for Benham, 6th for Donoso, 7th is Max Wiesel, Philip Presnader in 8th, 9th is Caraton, and just surviving in this session is Rune Pedroño in 10th and eliminated. And out of Q2 is Boulem Farah, Duncan Hoffland, Mirko Soriano, Luke Smith, and Tomek Perejic. But Luke, that concludes what was a very intense, very exciting Q2 session. The top 5, we saw 5 drivers on a 1minute 6.9 in that session. I wonder how many more we're going to see in Q3. If you are all enjoying this stream, make sure you do leave a like and subscribe to the WOR YouTube channel. It'll be greatly appreciated. And now, Luke, that our top 10 is set, who's going to be on pole position today?
I'm going to go for the bowling choice. I'm going to go for Thomas Ronhar. I just can't look past him at the moment. He's looked so nice and relaxed, so calm, just seems to be able to do it on that first lap. And that's going to sort of ease the pressure on him, I think. As long as you get that good first run in with no mistakes, then you can go for it a bit more on that second run. You've got that banker lap in to put yourself in good stead. You know, you're going to need at least a 106.8, possibly even a 106.7 to be on pole position, I think, around here. It's going to be a fantastic qualifying session. I can't wait. And by the looks of things, the drivers, they can't wait either. Already, we've got a few heading out onto the track.
Yep, and I'd imagine, Luke, this is once again going to be drivers coming out on a scrub set of tyres like we typically see at the beginning of Q2, unless, of course, they've been able to save enough tyres where they can do possibly 3 push laps in a row in quick succession on all fresh sets of tyres. We'll have to wait and see, but here's Max Wiesel. He was the first out on track. He's been swiftly overtaken by Fabrizio Donoso. Seems like that the Chilean driver is in a little bit of a hurry here as he heads up towards Ferradura. I mean, he's completely pushing on his outlap here. I mean, I know he's excited for the season to start, but, you know, there is still 12 minutes in this session to go, and he can't do that any quicker, so we'll have to wait and see what he can do. But here it is, your top 10. Everyone has been set. Who is going to be taking pole position in this one? Let us know in the live chat. Luke, I'm going to throw the question to you. Who's going to take pole today?
I'm going to go for Ron Hart for pole position. I'm also going to throw in another question in there for people in the chat. Who do they think out of we've got a few non-esports drivers in here. Who do they think is going to be the fastest out of those? I think I'm going to go for Jack West. He's looked really good in this session at the moment, and we'll see what the AlphaTauri man can do. But here comes Fabrizio Donoso. He's definitely on a scrubbed set of tyres. There's no way he was treating these tyres with any care on the outlap. After this lap, he's not going to be wanting to use these again.
No, they are going to be, I'd say, completely worn out and not really fit for a qualifying run. But we'll have to wait and see. He's already invalidated this lap. So if it was a fresh set of the tyres, I think it'd be in an even worse position. So it's a good thing that these are likely to be scrubbed. Max Wiesel, of course, is also pushing what is probably going to be a scrub set of the tyres. I mean, they wouldn't use these fresh sets and completely abuse them like they were. I mean, in towards what Retroposta, Fabrizio Donoso was making an overtake around the outside of Max Wiesel. So, I mean, they're not going to be treating these tyres with any respect whatsoever. There is a poll in the live chat at the moment if you would like to vote. Who is getting pole position? There's 3 options that are named. It is Nicholas, Thomas, and Josh. And then you have other, which is you have to comment that in the live chat. Out of the 3, I would say it's the boring option, but I think I'm going to have to go with Thomas Ronhard to take pole position here.
Yeah, I mean, we could be surprised if he, just takes a couple of mistakes in qualifying and then all of a sudden he's going to really be in big pressure and could be starting sort of in that midfield in 10th place at the moment. Max Wiesel, fastest of everyone, 107.489. Now, you might be wondering, why did Donoso carry on that lap? It's on an old set of tyres. It's an invalidated lap time. What is the point of that? If you are wondering that, it's purely to get a delta on the screen. It's just a bit of a psychological effect. When you do your next lap, you're going to see on a fresh set of tyres with better track conditions, you're going to be gaining time naturally. So you're not forcing yourself to push that a little bit too hard. So that just gets a delta on Donoso's screen. Gives him that little bit of a benchmark to beat, but it's not exactly the hardest benchmark to beat. And it's going to be the case for every one of these drivers. West and Wiesel, the only ones that have set a lap at the moment. Cavaton and Benham heading out onto the circuit. Interesting that Ronhard, Longe, Edu, Pedreño and Philip Presdada, first 4 minutes of qualifying, decided to stay put in the pits.
Yep, they're completely ghosting here at the moment. Maybe they're saving their best for last. I'm actually seeing on the mini-map there's a Red Bull exiting the pit lane now. I think Jake Benham on his outlap at the moment. And also I'm seeing a lot of love for him in the live chat at the moment. So Jake Benham, probably one of the fan favourites at the moment. I think this is going to be a fresh set of tyres. He's been a lot more careful with them than we've seen from Fabrizio Donoso and Max Wiesel. So we'll see what he can do as he heads down towards the start-finish straight, opening up the DRS and to begin his lap in towards the Senna S's, keeping it in 4th gear. They don't want to go down pretty much into the bottom 3 gears, getting onto the curbs a little bit on towards the Curve del Sol and then really riding it through the apexes. Now off the exit, opening up the DRS down the Retroposta and in towards the Cedar del Lago, braking as late as possible and then getting a good exit through. A little bit twitchy is Jake Benham. I think he was a bit too ambitious on the power, but towards Ferragure, he cannot let that phase himself. He knows he's got good pace around here and he knows that he has a shot of taking pole position, as in towards now the 2nd sector where things do take a little bit of a slow, in towards Pinarino and up towards Vico de Pato. Now of course Hamilton and Albon had their collision all the way back in 2019 through Magulio and up towards John Sau. We'll see what his delta times in the 2nd sector are. It's a 50.7 for Jake Benham. We'll see where that spits out in regards to the likes of Jack West and Max Wiesel, who did their times on a scrub set of tyres. Opening up the DRS now, Jake Benham, Luke, towards the line. We'll see what he can do, and it is going to be a 1:07.163.
It was a bit of a scrappy lap, wasn't it? Especially that first sector. We saw him get on the curb a bit too much at Curva del Sol. Definitely get on the curb too much as he just started the 2nd sector at Destino del Lago, and it looked like he had a couple of stabs at the steering wheel at Ferragure. So all things considered, with all of that happening, a 1:07.1's not really the worst lap time, but I think there's definitely more to come from the Season 11 champion. What can Thomas Ronhard do? Nicolas Longe's invalidated his first run in the session. Pedreño and Caraton, the Spanish duo there, both setting 1:07.3, so we'll be seeing more from them later on as they go onto a fresh set of tyres. But I think here's the man that a lot of people were rightfully saying could be the one to watch. Josh Edu, first man to get into the 1:06.8 throughout this qualifying session. Fantastic job from the young Welshman, but what can Ronhard do? Can he beat that? Can he get into the 1:06.7s towards the line? 1:06.796. Ronhard delivers once again. What can Josh and the rest of the field do in the remaining 5 minutes, 15 seconds?
I mean, really laying down the gauntlet is Thomas Ronhard there, and he's been so consistent around this circuit. He topped Q1, he came 2nd in Q2. It only feels right if he takes pole position, and he is well on track to do so with just 5 minutes left to go in this session. Longe is, I do believe, Luke, he is actually pushing on this lap. He's using that battery as he heads now through Magulio and up towards Junsao. We'll see what his sector 2 times are. It's about 2/10 off of what Thomas Ronhard did previously, so it's a decent enough time for him to get what I'd imagine is into P3 and in towards that 1:06. But we'll have to wait and see what Nicolas Longe can do. I don't believe he's going to be topping the timing sheets at the moment. And indeed, yeah, he's going to go into that 3rd position on 1:06.959. Still, I would say a respectable enough time. And Luki crucially does have enough minutes left in this session where he can come back into the pits, hopefully fit on a fresh set of the tyres, and then have another crack at the whip. So So I don't think this is the last we're going to see of Nicholas Longuet here.
No, and of course, crucially for him, he's got that time on the board. That takes the pressure off a bit. You might have noticed towards the end of that lap, everyone else has been sticking towards the left-hand side at the end. It's certainly not the racing line, but it's the quickest line for one lap. He drifted over to the right. He took that more natural racing line and is pushing hard on this in-lap to make sure that he's got enough time to get the tyres changed. Unfortunately, they can't do a quick change in the pits. They do have to be pushed into the garage, get the tyres changed, and head back out there, being such a short circuit. 3 minutes, 36 seconds remaining. He's got plenty of time as Longuet. Third place at the moment. We saw a lot more drivers in the 106s in the last session, so we know there is more time to come from Benham, Pedreño, Caraton, West, Wiesel, Freshneda, and we still don't know what Donoso can do in this session. Looking forward to seeing what the Chilean driver can do. You're going to have to go some to beat Ron Haar's time. I mean, has he got anything else in the bag?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm lost for words at the moment, Luke, with how this session is going. It's definitely taken a little bit of time, I'd say, for me to adjust back into commentary, but it is certainly, I think all the drivers have got a little bit more left in there. Thomas Ronhaar at the moment, he's backed by 55% of the voters in our poll at the moment for pole position. Make that 56. There's currently 176 votes at the moment. If you want to, make sure you head over to the live chat and then vote on that poll for who is topping Q3 at the end of this session. We have our drivers exiting the pit lanes to begin their final laps. The first man out on circuit is the man in 9th position, Philip Freshneda, currently on 1 minute 7.517. Is not the best time in the world for him. We'll see what he can do. I believe he probably did that on a scrub set of the tyres, but now here he comes off the exit at the final corner, opening up the DRS, and he'll begin his final run here.
Yeah, former top tier race winner, of course, taking the victory in that crazy Belgian Grand Prix last season here in WOR. What can Freshneda do tonight? Nice and steady through the Senna S's at the moment. Pretty much perfect, I'd say, through Curva del Sol. Fantastic job from him there. That car coming out of the pit lane, possibly not what he would have wanted there with Jake Benham, but already you can see the advantage a fresh set of tyres do. A 10th of a second up. It's only basically 3 corners and 16.5 seconds of lap time there. Now, in towards Ferragiola. What can Freshneda do? He's going to have to get, if he wants a decent grid slot, he's going to have to get into the 106s, and it wouldn't surprise me if there's more drivers in the 106s in this session than those that aren't. Through Pinarino, always a very tricky corner. Now Decido Del Largo hitting the apex nicely. Nicholas Longuet just missed it slightly through there on his fastest run. That's probably what's cost him a tiny bit of time in this session at the moment. Freshneda, as long as he doesn't mess up Young Sao, he's going to be comfortably into the 106s here at the moment. I think it's going to be good enough to beat Nicholas Longuet. Is this going to be good enough to provisionally put Freshneda on the first row of the grid towards the line in the Alpine? Just misses out on that second place by 5 thousandths of a second. But that is a fantastic improvement from him. Jake Benham, he heads towards the line. And now he's just starting his final qualifying lap. It is getting very exciting indeed in these final moments.
Less than a minute left to go here. Max Wiesel comes across the line to go into P4. Jack West is next up. I think he's actually just begun on his lap. Alvaro Caraton has been able to jump into P2 Fabrizio Donoso, beginning his final run in qualifying. Where's Thomas Ronhaar? I believe he is just beginning on his run, as is Nicholas Longuet. So we'll have to wait and see what those guys can do. Who's going to be first up to finish on their final laps? I'm actually not too sure. I think it might be Jake Benham, currently up by 300ths of a second in Q2. He's just coming in Q3, sorry, just coming through Bico de Pato now and through Magulio. We'll see what he can do through this second sector split. The clock has hit 0. Jake Benham up by 0.2 of a second, so we'll see what he can do as he gets a good exit out of Yun Sao, and now opening up the DRS. He's going to hold it towards that inside line. What can Jake Benham do? Philip Freshneda in the pit lane, retiring here. Jake Benham to the line. It is going to be P5 for now. Jack West will be next up in his AlphaTauri, up by 0.4 of a second, and here he comes now, the young Welshman coming up towards the line. Where's he going to go? It is only P9, still into the 1 minute 6s. Unbelievable. Everyone has been able to do that in this session. Josh Dowu up next towards the line. Can he go ahead of Ronhaar? No, he can't. He jumps onto that first row of the grid behind Thomas Ronhaar, who's coming up towards the line and improving even more. He is up and towards the 1 minute 6.718. A fantastic lap time coming out from him there. Nicholas Lonke does all he can. He gets just within 5 thousandths off the back of Alvaro Carreton. He'll be starting on the second row of the grid. Ruben Pedreño headed in towards the pit lane, and that brings us to the end of this qualifying session. Thomas Ronhaar tops the order with a 1 minute 6.718. A fantastic lap time from him here.
Yeah, and it's a very good point that someone has made in the chat there. It wasn't even close to a personal best final sector from Nicholas Longe. I think if he'd have matched what he'd done before, he'd have been in the 106.7s and he'd have been starting, at worst, second place, and who knows, might have been able to beat Thomas Ronhaar. But that didn't happen in the end. No point thinking about that. We've already got to move on to thinking about the race, and it is Thomas Ronhaar on pole position. Josh Edo, the only driver able to get within a tenth of a second of the young Dutchman.
Yeah, I think Thomas Ronhaar is firmly in control of this session, but of course, it is all about the race. There's no points for qualifying. He does start on pole position. Josh Adowu in P2, P3 for Alvaro Carreton, P4 for Nicholas Longe. Philip Presnader in 5th, starting alongside him is Jake Benham. Max Wiesel in 7th, 8th for Ruben Pedreño, Jack West in 9th, and for Fabrizio Donoso, without a lap time on the board, he'll be starting in P10. Now, Luke, before we get into this race, I do actually need to ask, we're doing a formation lap?
We're not doing a formation lap.
Okay.
I mean, I've said that before. I did a couple of weeks ago. I did proper hype up a start to the race, and then everyone went off very calm, very casually, and I was like, oh, it's a formation lap. But yeah, I can safely say we're not going to be doing a formation lap here, so they are going to be straight going into the racing, of course. We'll just take a quick look at the circuit in question. Interlagos, 4.309 kilometers, 2.677 miles, 2 DRS zones, 1 into Vicena S, 1 into Destino del Lago. Quite an undulated track, quite an interesting track, and as we head out to look at the race screen at the moment, quite an overcast track.
Yeah, I mean, we had rain last season, and it did start out dry, actually, but it was only for, the first, 1 or 2 laps, and then drivers instantly had to come in for a set of the intermediate tyres. Are we going to see history repeating itself? We'll have to find out. Before we get into this race, Luke, your top 3. Who is winning this race? Who's sitting on the podium?
I am going to go for Ronhaar to win. I'm going to go Longe second place, and I'm going to go Josh Edo for third.
Okay, we'll have to wait and see if Luke Etheridge's projection comes true, but here we are. Season 14 about to get underway. It is round number 1 here at the Brazilian Grand Prix. 5 red lights. And we are underway, and it looks to be a good start for Thomas Ronhaar as they head down in towards the first corner. Josh Adowu looking to be overtaken by Alvaro Carreton, but here it is. Ronhaar, he leads the way. Josh Adowu, P2. Alvaro Carreton going to be slotting behind in at P5. It's been a clean start throughout the grid. Pretty much everyone keeping their positions. Nicholas Longe going to be challenging for third position, looking to the inside, down in towards Destino del Lago. Here he goes towards the inside now. Alvaro Carreton, can he make that move stick? Indeed, he can. A little bit twitchy off the exit of that corner there. We've got a yellow flag at the moment. I think Jack West had a half spin. He's been able to save the car as now they head up towards Ferragura at the end of the first sector in towards sector 2. Thomas Ronhaar, Luke, leading the way.
Yeah, Ronhaar leading the way. Things stayed as they were with the top 2. I thought Josh Edo was going to be under a bit of pressure from Alvaro Carreton, and because he sort of half tried that move around the outside, that put him under pressure. And then now Nicholas Longe to get the move done on him. Great start by Fabrizio Donoso, up 3 places at the start of this race. Absolute nightmare for the Alpha Tauri. Tom Manley down 3 places, Jack West down 10 after the dramas that he has had. Nearly all on the same set of tyres. The only man who's doing something different is Manuel Biancalila. He's on a set of the medium tyres, so he needs to make hay while the sun shines, and there's not a lot of sun shining here at Sao Paulo at the moment, and to see if he can make any moves. But as they come on to lap 2, Thomas Ronhaar is leading. He's already nearly got that gap up to above a second. In fact, it has just tipped over that all-important 1 second margin.
I mean, he really is in control so far. It's a complete opposite of what we saw last time we came to Brazil, where he was under a lot of pressure the entire race. Pretty much never really sniffed the top of the order. Now he's firmly in control. He has a vice grip around this grid and is now just about getting around this circuit another 35 more times, and then we'll see if he is able to hold on to that lead, or is it Josh Adowu possibly going to try and look to work with Nicholas Longo. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, that'll be a strong partnership, I would say, and if they are able to slipstream off each other and close that gap to Thomas Ronhart, they could double team him and put the Hassman under a little bit of pressure. The DRS will be enabled this time by Josh Adowu, not looking like he's going to be touching it at the moment. Nicholas Longe almost dropping out of that 1 second window, could leave him to some pressure from Alvaro Caraton. Meanwhile, further back down the order, they're all shuffling in behind each other. We got a big train forming throughout the entirety of this grid. I'm looking at Fabrizio Donoso. He's had a fantastic start. Can he possibly get close to the back of Philip Presneder, who is losing touch with Jake Benham at the moment? Is Ruben Pedrano going to see a move possibly on the back of him as well? We'll have to wait and see as they head on towards the third lap here. DRS, Luke, has been enabled.
Yeah, DRS has been enabled. Everyone apart from our top two taking advantage of that at the moment. Interestingly, I'll check if that's still the case. Josh Eno has used more ERS than Thomas Ronhart. So it's not like Josh has decided, you know what, he can have his fun for the first few laps. I'm going to wait until I've got everything underway in mind and then just see what can happen. But no, Thomas Ronhart's doing a fantastic job at the moment. Josh has pushed like crazy on his ERS. Nicholas Longe hasn't, so things might start coming back to Nicholas. And in a way, that might just help Josh if they swap around without losing themselves too many places. Though saying that, Josh has had an absolutely nightmare run coming out of Yongzhou, and this surely is going to give Nicholas Longe a perfect opportunity to take second place. The Welshman not even bothering to defend. And there goes our Season 12 champion, now into the top two.
Yeah, well, Josh Adowu, he might have an opportunity to attack with DRS down the Retro Aposta, but already with a poor exit out of Curva de Sol, that looks more than unlikely at the moment. So Josh Adowu is struggling for race pace at the moment, and he's used up a lot of the battery. It's going to be difficult to charge it up if he's trying to catch up to Nicholas Longe and stay within that slipstream and DRS. I wouldn't be surprised, Luke, if in a few laps we see Alvaro Caraton closing up to the back of him and making an overtake as we're on lap number 4 at the moment. I'm just looking at the ERS conditions of everyone in that top 5. Jake Benham has hardly used the battery at all. He's got 92% in that Mercedes, and surely that is going to help him as this race carries on. He's not going to have to worry later on in this race about his resources. However, I think there's a little bit of pressure because he is beginning to lose touch with Caraton ever so slightly, and just so I say that, he just dabbles on the ERS, so he knows how to control this race, and I think Jake Benham, he could be a dark horse here.
Yeah, I think that's where you sort of see the drivers using their ERS the most effectively. When they're first starting accelerating off the corner, you're pretty traction limited. You don't want to be using any ERS just to spin the wheels up. It's wasted energy. Then you're power limited. That's when you want to be getting on this extra 150 horsepower. And when you get to the top speeds, you're limited by the drag. Drag squares with speed, so all of a sudden you're finding yourself in a bit of trouble, and that extra brake horsepower is probably only going to give you 1 or 2 miles an hour, as Matthias van Erven has retired from the session. It looks like he may have just retired the car actually out on track because it is still moving along. So thankfully for his teammate, that will not cause a safety car. And it seems like Longe's decided to use a bit of that ERS that he was saving. He's almost got within 1 second. And I think this is going to be crucial for possibly the race entirely. See whether Longe can get within that 1 second margin. Because once he gets DRS, that might just allow the field to close in once again. We're in the management phase of the race at the moment. This is how league races tend to work for the first stints until we start seeing pit stops, possibly, you know, those on the hard tyres. We might see them coming in around about 16, 17 to 18 to go on to a set of the medium tyres. That's normally when all hell breaks loose, really.
Nicholas Longe has just about been able to peak within that DRS window, so he is now going to be able to open the letterbox at the rear of his wing, and there it is. He's now going to be able to close that gap, and Josh Adowu not really got the message. He's now out of DRS range of Nicholas Longe, so what looked like potentially Longe pulling everyone back into this race has now just left him in control at the moment. He's got no one behind him to really support him at the moment, and he's already losing touch with Thomas Ronhart, so it seems like Longe in no man's land at this point. Josh Adowu really is struggling for pace at the moment. Alvaro Caraton also has a substantial amount more ERS than him in that battery, and we've got a spin further back behind. That is Ruben Pedrano going around with a title contender, P3 in the championship last season. He's had a spin through Pinarino there, and now he's right towards the back of the order, down in towards 17th position And it's not been a good start to season 14 for him.
No, just hasn't really hit the ground running, I think, as he would have liked. Didn't see whether there was any other cars involved in that, but it's very easy to just drop it onto the curb at the exit of that corner. Find yourself spinning around, and that's dropped him. Well, pretty much already. He's going to find it very difficult. Himself, Tom Manley, and Jack West, who had that incident earlier on. They are right down at the back of the field. And keeping an eye on the only man to start on a set of the medium tyres, Manuel Biancalila. Yes, he's gained 3 places, but Pedreño, West, and, Manley and Van Erven have all had their own problems. So it's not worked out for him whatsoever. And he's going to gain time, obviously, when he puts on a fresh set of hard tyres. He should be able to put himself further up the order. But then he's going to be against everyone else who's on a set of mediums. And he's going to find things, I think, very tough to get any points in this race. And if you're wondering how the point system works here in World Online Racing, it is almost identical to that which is used in Formula 1. The only difference is there is no point for the fastest lap. Otherwise, it's 25 for a win, 18 per second, 15 for third, and so on.
Yep, and at the moment, I think going back to Manuel Biancalila, it was worth taking the risk, but it is pretty clear that hard mediums is the way to go, and that sort of really is the case in pretty much every league race on every circuit, is that you want to start on the harder tyres, so later on in the race you're going to have less fuel, you're not going to be putting as much wear into that softer compound, you can use it for longer. At the moment, I think we could see an overtake for position, because Fabrizio Donoso is looking very close to the back of Philip Presneder, struggling for pace at the moment, is the Alpine car, and there goes the former Alpine and Renault driver. Now Fabrizio Donoso up the inside, and he takes that position in towards P6. Can he catch up to Jake Benham? He's got 52% in the battery, so I think we could see him maybe phase into this race later on. However, at the moment, looking at the battery situation, Jake Benham, Luke, he's still got 95%, and he's been able to keep touch with Alvaro Carreton and Josh Adowu. So I think we definitely could see this man in with a very strong chance of taking a podium. And speaking of podiums at the moment, actually your prediction at the moment as it stands, spot on, Luke.
It's very rare many of my predictions are spot on. That is all I'm saying. There's still a long, long way to go in this race. Still 28 laps. Still Longuet just about hanging on to the back of Ron Hart. And still Josh Edu just not looking like he's got the pace of those lead 2 cars at the moment. ERS lights flashing all over the place. I'm not surprised Benham's not really going for it at the moment. He's not going to gain a lot from, using up all his ERS to try and have a move on Carreton. His 3rd car in the train. It's a difficult place to be to make any overtakes. We've seen you can make overtakes, even if the car in front has DRS, but Presneder was about 8 or 9 tenths behind Benham at that time, and in that situation, the slipstream is quite a lot less powerful than it is when you're at this distance that we're seeing now. So I think they'll stay calm. We might see some of those a bit further back, Hoffland, Ferrer, Suriano, they might try something a bit different, coming to the pit slightly earlier on, try and, they've got really nothing to lose, especially, if you Bradchich Parnell, you're going to be finding things pretty difficult in 13th or 14th at the moment. So we'll wait and see what can happen. What does look like to be happening at some parts of the circuit is that the sun's just starting to come out a tiny bit more, which I'm sure would please all the drivers. Although, is that another reason why we're seeing so many on the hard tyres? Are they expecting a tiny bit of rain at the end of this race?
I mean, I'm not too sure. I mean, last season we saw pretty much everyone starting, I think, on the medium or the soft, and that pretty much confirmed right from the start there was going to be rain very early on. If everyone's opting for the hards, some drivers typically they do try and be contrarians and go for the set of the mediums. Like Manuel Biancalila, we normally see more than one driver do that. There could possibly hint maybe about 20-25 laps in, we could see some rain. However, the sun peeking through, I think especially up towards the end of the circuit, of near about Junsao, that's where we're seeing a lot of the sun peeking through. We'll have to wait and see. Still a long race left to go. We're only a quarter of the way through at this point, so still plenty of action left to be had. At the top of the order, it seems like Thomas Ronhart and Nicolas Longuet, they are just running away with this race at the moment. Josh Adowu has got a big train in behind him. Then there's a split between Philip Presneder and Max Wiesel. Then it is the rest of the order, but still everyone pretty much from 3rd downwards is in DRS of each other, all the way up towards Ruben Pedreño, who's really not had a good race today.
No, certainly hasn't. Carreton had a bit of a bad run there coming out of Yongzhou, and I think that just cost him any chance of being able to make a move on Josh Edo. But with the DRS, was able to defend from Jake Benham as well, who still has got plenty of battery life. He's just happy sitting in this 5th place at the moment. He's not coming under any pressure from the cars behind. Someone who might start coming under some pressure soon is Max Wiesel. He's now dropped outside of DRS range, so that train for the final podium slot is down to just 5 cars at the moment. And is this break-up in the field going to perhaps force a few more drivers to pit early, just try and force the issue, try and do something different? Biancalillo's definitely doing something different. Unfortunately for him, he's driving a slightly different track to everyone else. He's the first driver to pick up 3 seconds of penalties.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty long time. I forgot penalties were actually a thing up until this point, and Biancalillo, 11 laps in, the first driver to get a time penalty. It's quite impressive, I'd say, for all of these PC drivers, so well done to them. But normally, when one gets a penalty, everyone else just decides to take one instead. We'll have to wait and see, though, as Jake Benham used a bit of the battery, headed on towards the start-finish straight. He could be prying an opportunity, possibly on towards Alvaro Carreton. Nicolas Longe as well, close to the back of Thomas Ronha. We've just seen Duncan Hoffland go for a move on Max Wiesel here, so it seems like a lot of these drivers kicking into gear ever so slightly. Seems like no one is really close enough to make an overtake down in towards the in towards Desida Delago, but they are all getting a lot closer on circuit. Josh Adowu, once again, he's driving the widest Red Bull at the moment for Alvaro Carreton. He really just cannot find an opportunity to overtake. That's leaving him under pressure to Jake Benham in behind, and now at this point in towards the second sector, they are bunching up a lot more than what we've seen in previous laps. Luke, I think Jake and Alvaro, they're going to be smelling blood in the water here.
Yeah, you just sense the frustration starting to build, because I can see every lap Ronha and Longe are just getting, last couple of laps, it's only been a 10th or 2 faster than them, but it is adding up and things are really getting difficult at the moment. A little bit of a wobble there from Josh Edo, and this could be the opportunity. Alvaro Carreton burning up the battery, opening up the DRS, and I think very soon he's going to be taking 3rd place, as easy as you like, down the pit straight here into the second third of the race, and Alvaro Carreton takes 3rd. Now, can he escape from Josh Edo, and can Jake Benham possibly follow him through?
Here comes Jake Benham off the exit of Curva del Sol. He had a very bad run through there, caught the curve a little bit too much, almost had a spin, was able to correct the car in time. However, that's put a wall between himself and Alvaro Carreton. If Carreton is able to stretch his advantage in the second sector, it's going to be a lot more difficult for Jake Benham to take a podium in this one. Josh Adowu has been driving a solid race so far. He's been able to keep these guys behind him for quite some time. He's just not really had that tenacity in his race pace so far this evening that we've seen from the likes of Ronha and Longe, and that is why we are seeing such a big gap between the top 2 and the rest of the order, as Jake Benham now, he is prying the opportunity off the exit of Junsao, using some of the battery here. He knows he's been able to see the blinking red light of Josh Adowu's Red Bull, and there it is. He's not got any battery here. Josh Adowu defending to the inside line. Jake Benham's going to force the gap. He goes up the inside. Can he sense an opportunity on Alvaro Carreton? Not quite this time by. However, he is up into P4. Can he make it P3 by the end of this straight? Doesn't look like it. A good exit off of Curva del Sol for Alvaro Carreton, so it is going to have to settle for P4. Jake Benham ahead of Josh Adowu now.
Yeah, Carreton and Benham just forcing the issue there. I think they knew Ronha and Longe are just getting a bit too far away to be comfortable, as that is another spin for Tom Manley. Admitted in the Discord that he's not really had the chance to practice as much as he would have liked, and he is the first driver to go for a spin there. I think his teammate must have had an issue as well, because Jack West's dropped a long way off the back of the order. Safe to say, barring a safety car, AlphaTauri will not be getting any points in this race at the moment. I'm surprised we haven't seen someone just try something different. It is still very early days when it comes to the strategy. I think we can only be a couple of laps away from the first drivers considering whether to come into the pits. And while we've been watching all that battling going on with Carreton, Benham and Josh Edo, what has happened? Nicolas Longe's built up a bit more battery and is now definitely within the DRS of Thomas Ronha. Things getting very close indeed between them. Things also getting close between Luke Smith and Mirko Suviano, the Williams driver, up into 11th.
Yeah, it seems like because the sun is beginning to shine over this circuit, all the drivers have been given a new lease of life at the moment. Nicholas Longe pretty much on the same amount of battery as Thomas Ronhart at the moment, so those two are going to go hammer and tong as Jack West peeling into the pit lane. That is the first of the hard runners at this point to come into the pits, first of anyone actually to box at this point on lap number 15. We're going to be expecting them in around about, I want to say, lap 20 to lap 23. Sort of is going to be the approximate pit window. Maybe some drivers would want to pit a lap before, I'd imagine, but we'll have to, I mean, we'll see in due course. We're only a few laps off of the proper pit window through here. A good indicator of when a driver is going to box if they're using up the ERS, because typically they'll be able to just build it back up in the pit lane, so they might as well blitz it all on their in lap and then have the best time possible, possibly to cover up any undercuts. I'm looking at Longe now, and he was braking a little bit earlier there than Thomas Ronhard. Well, we see there. I think he wanted to keep the DRS. He wants to stay in that slipstream. He's saving tyres by staying in the wheel tracks of Thomas Ronhard, who's just sort of punching a hole through the air for him, allowing him not to put as much wear through the tyres. And I'd say this is a very smart game that Longe is playing.
Yeah, Fabrizio Donoso was doing something similar on the back of Josh Eder as well. He looked almost close enough to go for a move, but the Chilean driver in the end deciding just to stay behind. And you're right, yes, they burn up their tyres in the dirty air, but they can save a bit of fuel. None of them looking low on their fuel at the moment, so that's perhaps not the biggest concern. Can save a bit of ERS as well, which is just going to help them when they get into some free air. So very interesting to see how things are working out. Also, Caraton's got back within 2 seconds of Ronhard and Longe, so who knows, an undercut could just help Caraton here get back within a second of our lead duo. And then we're going to have a proper battle for the lead of this race. Ronhard stays out, Longe stays out. Are we going to see any of our front runners coming into the pits? It doesn't look that way at the moment. And certainly Longe not bothered about going for the lead of the race. He shut his DRS well before he hit the brakes there.
Yeah, I think he is just biding his time here. We've seen Luke Smith come into the pit lane now. I'd imagine it's going to be a set of the mediums strapped on to his Williams. Interestingly enough, the two Alpha Tauris have opted for a set of the soft compound tire. I'm not too sure if they're going to be able to get to the end with a yellow flag through there. That is, I think, Jack West exiting the pit lane. So the two Alpha Tauris really not having a good time of it today, as we're just waiting for the rest of the runners to come into the pit lane. Nicholas Longe has been able to save up his battery following in behind, and I think all this backing off these two have been doing is really inviting Alvaro Caraton into this fray, and if he can have a good pit stop, he'll be in a very nice position. Maybe an undercut is in order for the Spaniard as now they head through Junsao. Are we going to see any pitters through here? They can't actually make an overtake down this straight. There's yellow flags waving at this point, and that is one of the Alpha Tauris. I think that's just Tom Manley going incredibly slow down the start finish straight, and it is pretty much stopping anyone from making an overtake through here. Meanwhile, no one comes into the pit lane.
No, all staying out. Well, one driver's coming to the pit lane, but he's a long way down the order. Ruben Pedreño into the pits. I thought for a second Caraton might be coming in. He burnt quite a bit of ERS coming out of Junsao, but in the end decides to stay out onto the circuit for now. Briefly got within about 1.5, 1.6 seconds, but with no DRS, unsurprisingly down the pit straight and the Retro-Aposta, the back straight. That Longe manages to just pull away that tiny little bit. It's intriguing to see that so many of these drivers are deciding to go this deep into the race. I thought we'd see lap 16, lap 17 be where the majority would come in, but it can be borderline with the medium tyres. I remember on previous games, you'd be able to pit, lap 13, 14, 15 was the norm around this circuit, but tyre strategy is completely different on F122 to what they were on some of the predecessor games. Now, are we going to see any of our leaders come into the pit? Thomas Ronhard, the spanner and the screwdriver are lit up, but that doesn't mean you are going to be coming in. He stays out, Longe stays out. Ooh. What about anyone else? And we have had some of the front runners come in. Edu, Presneda, Hoffland, and Max Wiesel all into the pit lane. Unfortunately for Wiesel, didn't get it slowed down in time.
Yeah, Max Wiesel gets a 5-second time penalty for speeding, and I'm not too sure if my eyes are deceiving me there, but I think Josh Adowu, he might have been a bit too late to dive into the pits there. I'm not too sure. I'm not going to throw blame anywhere. I think I might actually just clip it on my side of things, but he might have cut the pit lane there. So I will have a look at that, but I think that might be one that needs to be investigated. Josh Adowu is not having a great time in terms of race pace, and here he is merging back onto the track just ahead of Luke Smith. And with his tyre warm-up, surely Luke Smith, who's running in about 11th position, is going to be easily able to get by on the Welshman in the Red Bull. However, with no battery, he's not going to be able to close that gap enough up towards Ferragura. I think just for the time being, Luke Smith is going to have to sit in behind this Red Bull driver. However, that shows the power that the undercut does have, and I'd imagine in response to the rest of the grid, surely is Ronhard going to come in? Is Longe going to come in? They're both opting to stay out. However, Alvaro Caraton coming into the pit lane.
Yeah, Donoso, Feather and Soriano also into the pit lane again, and AlphaTauri having a bit of an issue there. They are not having a good race whatsoever. I'm interested to see here where Ido is going to come out relative to Caraton. Yes, he had half a lap of warming up the tyres, but now that they've warmed up, those mediums are going to be pretty damn fast indeed, and it wouldn't surprise me if he's able to get side by side with Caraton, or at least as close to him as Luke Smith was able to get earlier on, just coming around the pit lane now. And in the end, Caraton quite a bit more clear than what I thought. And you know what? Fabrizio Donoso, he's also managed to jump Josh Ido. Wow. Not a good outlap whatsoever from the Welshman.
Yeah, he's just not had the pace at this point. However, with the tyre warm-up being so bad on this game, I think Fabrizio Donoso is going to be coming under pressure. It's a similar story to what we saw with Luke Smith following behind Josh Adowu just one lap ago. Can Adowu try and make a move through here? I don't see it happening at this point. In towards Pinarino and up towards Beacon Pato. If he wants this overtake, he's going to have to dive. Meanwhile, Thomas Ronhard coming into the pit lane. Longate staying out. Jake Benham coming into the pits. Tomek Parancic has no choice but to stay out. And it is a 5-second time penalty for Jake Benham there.
And I don't think my eyes deceived me.
I think, yeah.
Fairly sure Thomas Ronhard's got a 5-second penalty in all of that as well. So Nicholas Longay, he's in a brilliant situation all of a sudden. Surely all he's got to do is keep it fairly clean on the penalty front, and he's got a fantastic chance of marking his return to WOR with a race victory. We'll see how things are going to work with the undercut here. Where's Caraton going to come out relative to Jake Benham? They're going to be pretty close on the exit of the pit lane here. Benham having to just cut across in front of Caraton slightly. Williams has at the inside line, and the Williams takes provisionally what could well be second place here. And now Benham and Donoso are having their own little battle. Mercedes and Ferrari side by side, still going side by side through Ferragura. Donoso briefly has got his nose ahead and manages to take the place. Fantastic driving from Donoso. Yeah, that was so close between the two of them there. Benham just about holding on from Caraton. As soon as he got pushed offline, Donoso take advantage.
Absolutely, and Donoso is also another driver with a 5-second time penalty to his name. So despite struggling all this much for race pace, I do believe that we might actually see Josh Adowu on track for a podium position. Meanwhile, at the front of the order, Will Lewis is the only man not to pit, as Nicholas Longe coming out of the pit lane now. Thomas Ronhard is going to emerge on circuit a good few tenths ahead of the Alfa Romeo, I would say, and he's actually going to be quite clear up the road. Whereas Longe is going to emerge in comparison to Caraton, he's going to be about a second ahead of the Williams car. So at this point, I'm trying to work out, I think the top three is Longe, Caraton, Adowu.
Yeah, it's crazy. I've never seen this many speeding penalties from people. We're hearing here that the esports build might have had a slightly different pit entry. You know, maybe that just shows who's been practicing a bit more on the actual build. And also, you know, has someone destroyed the brake boards in the pits? Now, they are allowed. There is that little fiddly chicane on the way into the pit lane. They are allowed to cut it in World Online Racing. They were told that in the stewards' inquiries. Don't normally see that too often. So I wonder whether that's just sort of put them off how they're able to take the pit entry, and they're just coming in that tiny bit too hot. And it doesn't matter if you're 1 kilometre an hour over, it doesn't matter if you're 100 kilometres per hour over. In league racing, you end up getting the same penalty from the game, and that is a 5-second penalty, and that could well be the penalty that cost Ronhard this race. He's 1.9 seconds ahead of Longe at the moment, but effectively that means he's got 14 laps to find another 3.1 seconds.
And I think a podium is definitely on the cards for Thomas Ronhaar here. However, it is going to be very tricky for him to drop Nicolas Longuet at this point. So the Frenchman, all he has to do is keep within that 5-second window of Thomas Ronhaar, and he's got that's about 3.2 seconds buffer at the moment where he can make a mistake. So even if he gets a time penalty at this point, for multiple track extensions, he'll still be winning this race by the end of it. However, of course, sometimes there is a known little glitch where you can be right on the limiter. However, if it's like a slight, I don't know if it's something to do with like decimals or whatever, but I think it does round up your speed. So maybe if you're just a slight bit over, somehow Jack West has got a 10-second time penalty. I don't think he's got any chance of coming back into this race. However, Thomas Ronhaar, if that glitch has happened here, he could be just about safe in this one.
Yeah, it could be just about safe. He'll have to, of course, prove that glitch happened! No! Ronhaar around the outside of Will Lewis and just sort of gives Will a little bit of a love tap there. Very well held from the young Englishman, but I don't think he's going to be too happy about that one because that certainly cost him a bit of time. But that shows just how hard Ronhaar is pushing at the moment. He's got to effectively do 13 qualifying laps if he wants to win this race. Manley and West retire in the pits. In a way, I'm kind of glad because I just got a feeling they were getting in the way of each other, and certainly it can be a distraction, even though ghosting's on. When you've got these lap cars, it's not something you see too often in league racing. But yeah, Ronhaar just flying his way past Will Lewis. He's now 2.3 seconds ahead of Nicolas Longuet, and there is still a very long train behind Lewis at the moment now. Longuet, Caraton, Benham, Donoso, Edu, Smith just about in that. Wiesel, Presneda and Ferrer. Penalties are going to play a massive part in this result all the way down the field.
Absolutely, as now Nicolas Longuet is looking onto the back of Will Lewis. He's really not fighting for anything. I think Will does this quite often. He just races for the vibes, and he likes to spend as much time at the front of the order as he can. And there it is. He's not going to put up any fight. He's not here to get in the way of anyone. And Nicolas Longuet slips on through, and imagine Alvaro Caraton is going to be doing the same as he heads on towards the Retroposta. Here he comes towards the Cida de Lago. Will Lewis defending ever so slightly, pushing Alvaro Caraton offline and in towards the corner. They go. Caraton does manage to make the move stick. Probably not in the most efficient fashion that he would have wanted there. Will Lewis maybe getting his elbows out in the wrong places, and there it is. He's now let Jake Benham go through. He lets Fabrizio Donoso around the long way here. And he is certainly being a spanner in the works for all of these runners who are fighting for potentially the final spot on the podium in this race. So Will Lewis, when is he going to pit? I'm not too sure, Luke.
Yeah, we saw the last time we went to Brazil, drivers on different strategies. Of course, Manuel Biancalilla had that contact with Jake Benham, so I imagine Jake could have been delighted to see Will backing out the way there. He'd probably hoped, though, that he'd have held up Fabrizio Donoso as well. Josh Edom just getting held up a tiny bit here on those medium tyres. He's not got a lot of ERS, so this hasn't been the easiest of moves for Josh Edom, but he has finally got ahead of Will Lewis. And yeah, I've seen Will do this loads of times. If there's a safety car, he might end up looking like a bit of a genius at the moment, but you know, it's pretty tough to rely on a safety car at the moment. As Presneda and Ferrer, they're getting close together. Ferrer taking a very interesting line through turn number 3, and in doing so, that just seals 10th place for Presneda, who also, without any penalties, is on for a really good result in that Alpine.
Absolutely. I mean, he's just been able to survive in this one. I think the likes of Luke Smith, Philip Presneda, maybe not Tomek Parajas, he's quite a long way off the back at the moment, but those two, Luke Smith and Presneda, they could be on for a very nice result. And Luke Smith is actually just getting by on Will Lewis at the moment, who is still not pitting despite being 25 laps on those tyres. And he is really getting in the way here because now Luke Smith, I think he's made a slight blunder, and Max Wiesel could have an opportunity to go by on the Williams car. Philip Presneda slips through in towards 9th position now. Will Max Wiesel seize this opportunity, given they've got no one in front of them to give DRS to Luke Smith, as here he comes opening up that rear wing and headed in towards the first corner. Has to look to the outside line. Philip Presneda could maybe make it 3 wide as they both go through. Luke Smith losing 2 positions in towards that first corner. Max Wiesel up into 7th, 8th for Philip Presneda. Down into 9th is Luke Smith.
Yeah, he's not going to be sending Will Lewis any, I was going to say Christmas cards, but we're a long way before they're thinking about that, of course. But yeah, just Will tried to go for the move, didn't quite work. He was quite forceful I think Luke Smith earlier on with the moves as well, so maybe we'll just give Luke a taste of his own medicine. But Max Wiesel does have a penalty, so Luke won't be too bothered about him. He will be bothered about the fact that Prejdada has got in front of him at the moment. We're going to have to be doing a lot of maths, I think, to work out where drivers are going to be at the end of this race, with 5-second penalty for Ronhaar, Benham, Donoso, Wiesel, Ferrer, Suriano, and 3 seconds of penalties for Biancalila and Lewis, so that's not going to have too much of an effect on things at the moment. Just trying to think, just trying to get the gap up. 5.6 seconds between Edu and Ronhaar, so as things stand at the moment, Thomas Ronhaar is still on for a podium at the moment, and no disrespect for Josh, he hasn't really shown in the race that he's got the pace to be able to make up that gap as Jake Benham gets past Alvaro Carreton provisionally onto the podium.
Yeah, he still has something to prove in this race, looking for, I think, what is going to be P4 for Jake Benham by the end of it. If he's able to pull out that gap to Philip Prejdada and Luke Smith, he could still be on track for a potential top 3 if he's able to stretch that advantage to Josh Idowu, who is really struggling at this point in the race. But the top 3 at this moment in time is Thomas Ronhaar, Nicolas Longue, Alvaro Carreton, then Thomas Ronhaar, and then I think it is Josh Idowu, Jake Benham, then Fabrizio Donoso. I believe that is how the top 5 to top 6 works out. My maths might be wrong. I'm just doing this all on the fly. That's why I didn't take it for A level. But here we are now. We'll have to wait and see how this race pans out. Nicolas Longue, however, has been able to slowly whittle that gap down to Thomas Ronhaar in front of him. However, Fabrizio Donoso looks closer than anyone at the moment for an opportunity for a position. However, Alvaro Carreton in that DRS of Jake Benham, he's not going to be able to sniff that overtake.
No, not at the moment. Donoso got quite a bit close for lap before once Benham had made the move on Carreton, but hasn't been able to follow him through. And of course, he'll want to do that. You never know. Are these penalties going to get removed? It sounds like the line is just in a slightly different place than the esports build. If that's the case, then it's just tough luck. You know, you can't really say to them, oh, that's absolutely fine, because if you'd have done a few more laps practice, you might have realised the line was in a slightly different place. There are still, annoyingly, it has to be said, those tiny differences between the retail build and the esports build. I think how things are going at the moment, Prejdada would just about finish ahead of Jake Benham. Gap between the two of them is 4.8. Well, I think it's just briefly shot up to 4.9 seconds. So we'll see how that goes later on. Suriano gets a time penalty. Runner-up here last year. Certainly not going to be the runner-up here today, barring any absolute chaos. It has been a relatively clean first race, I've got to say.
Yeah, aside from the mountain of penalties for speeding in the pit lane, I think these drivers have been they've kept their noses relatively clean, especially for front wings. I don't even think anyone's pitted for damage in this race, aside from maybe Tom Manley and Jack West, who had their incidents at some point. Matthijs van Erven just decided to stop it on the circuit, and then Tom Manley and Jack West, they had their fun throughout the entirety of it. Now they've all retired, but other than that, no one really has actually taken any damage, and there's been no collisions, and I think it's going to be a relatively chill day for the stewards, I'd say. Unless everyone's complaining about the esports line being different for the pit entry. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, the stewards might be able to take this Sunday evening nice and easy. Maybe watch the NFL Red Zone. I know that's going to be on tonight. I'm actually quite looking forward to that one as well. But yeah, it's been a relatively clean race. I think you're absolutely right in saying that, Luke.
Yeah, stewards might be having a chilled evening. I don't think Philip Prejdada's got a chilled evening at the moment. I know I was talking about could he beat Jake Benham. His main concern at the moment is going to be keeping this gaggle of cars that he's got behind him. He wants to make sure he doesn't get overtaken. Max Wiesel there, Luke Smith, Boelen Ferrer, all looking very good as well. Wiesel just goes a bit deep into Young Sao, and that just gives that opportunity for Prejdada to break a little bit further away. Further up the field, Alvaro Carreton closing on Jake Benham. Can't quite get close enough, although he's not going to be massively bothered about that because he knows. Well, actually, I say he's not going to be massively bothered about that. He's now 4.9 seconds behind Thomas Ronhaar. So all of a sudden, the pace of Thomas Ronhaar is putting him within a chance of securing second place despite that speeding penalty.
Yeah, so Ronhaar's pace is just really undeniable at this point, and he's on slightly fresher tyres than Alvaro Carreton. That might be a slight worry to him, but I think even a bigger worry It's going to be Donoso in behind him. He has got some great pace at the moment in his Ferrari car. He's got slightly more battery than the two in front of him, so he is definitely a worry. And if they start fighting it out, well, then they're gonna lose some time. Thomas Ronhard is going to be able to bump that 5-second window, and all of a sudden, Alvaro Carreton is going to be losing that P2 as they head on towards now lap number 32. We're winding down in this first race here at Brazil. It's certainly been an interesting one this evening. There's been lots of drama in terms of the pit stops, and there's been some decent battling throughout the entirety of it. As here comes Carreton in towards turn number 1. He's not able to get close enough to Jake Benham to find an overtake, but in towards Decided Largo and down the Retro Aposta. Can he try and overtake? I don't think so. I think he's biding his time here, and well, yeah, I think he's maybe settling at this point for P3. I'm just going to quickly get the gap to the leader. He's now 5.1 seconds off the back of Thomas Ronhard, so now it is confirmed. Ronhard, if he's able to keep this gap, he will be staying in P2. Alvaro Carreton will be relegated down to 3rd.
Yeah, you could tell on the braking zone towards turn number 4, Decido de Largo. Carreton was taking his time. He was lifting and coasting. He didn't need to do that for any fuel saving purposes, but yeah, just nice and calm from Carreton at the moment, but I think he's accepted. He's not getting that 2nd place. Well, Lewis, he's still carrying on. Fastest lap of the race. No points for that anyways.
No.
Donoso's left the session, and that's going to be a bit of a nightmare for him. Josh Edu is right on the back of him. That ends any potential battle between Benham and Donoso. Surely, hopefully, the Chilean man can get back into the session because he's got a bit of a gap back to Presneda, so there's time for him to do so.
His AI's pit for some reason. Well, what? I'm not too sure why the AI has decided to pit and serve his 5-second time penalty. Very odd here. Yeah, I mean, I feel for him, I'd say. I really do feel for him here.
Yeah, that is really, really cruel for him. That's made this battle a little bit more exciting, though. It was for 9th place. It's now for 8th place. Luke Smith all over the moves trying to defend from Buell and Ferrer. Very robust defending from the esports man, but Ferrer just staying behind for now, and Luke Smith hanging on to that 8th place. That promotes Pavadchits into the points. So with Liam Parnell and Ruben Pedreño not being too far behind, and Max Wiesel and Buell and Ferrer both having penalties, there's opportunities for points for some of these drivers further down the order. And Liam Parnell had a bit of a tough season last time, so it would be great to see him start the season by getting some points, and it's been well deserved. He's just managed to keep things nice and clean. It's been a better second stint as well from the man on the screen at the moment, Josh Edu. Whether he's had any damage, whether he's had any issues, I'm not quite so sure. But at the moment, he's going to be on for a nice 4th place. And I think he'd have taken that for a return to World Online Racing.
I think Josh Dodowu, even though in that first stint he really did not have very good pace at all, he's been quite strong in this second stint, keeping up with the likes of Jake Benham and Alvaro Carreton, who from the offset looked very, very quick around this circuit. So we do have to give it to him. You know, he's not facing any issues in terms of his own pace. Maybe he has got some like minor damage to the body or the front wing at some point, and it's just not really been enough to pit. But I'd say this has been a very good race for him. So I think a P4 on his return to WOR, that'd be a very nice result for him, as Luke Smith and Tomek Paradzic getting the elbows out. Buell Ferrer now trying to make a move on the Polish driver. This is the battle for P8 at the moment. Around the outside of the Mercedes goes Buell, shoved almost off the circuit there by Paradzic. I'd say that's very nice and fair racing from the Polish driver. He's going to maintain P9, the Algerian man now in P10, could be seeking some vengeance. They head down the start finish straight to begin the penultimate lap of this round number 1 race, as Buell Ferrer is going to allow for Liam Parnell to go through. He knows he's not racing him at this point, and now here comes Parnell to the outside of Paradzic in towards the first corner of the battle for the 9th place in this race. Can Parnell do it as they head down in towards what is going to be the Retro Aposto and in towards the Cida de Largo? Can Liam Parnell do it, closing the gap in the wheel tracks of Paradzic, but not quite this time by a nice battle for the lower ends of the points. It's great to see these drivers. They still have fight despite not battling for much here.
Yeah, it's great to see that a lot of these drivers further down the order have carried on going right until the end. Bianca Lila's put on what I imagine is going to be another set of the soft tyres, so he's going to go for the fastest lap for the bit of a glory run as well, and who can blame him? All that battling we saw with Paradzic, Parnell and Ferrer, it started. Paradzic went for a move on Luke Smith, couldn't quite make it work. It was a very robust move. There was definite contact between the two of them. That gave Federer an opportunity, and somehow it ended up with Liam Parnell, who was a bit further back, but had a lot more battery, able to get past Federer, and almost able to make it work on Peracic as well. Our leaders are on to the final lap of the race. I think there's going to be some more moves happening here, and Caraton is very briefly back within that 5-second window. Maybe, just maybe, we could still see the Spaniard take second.
We'll have to wait and see. He has got DRS on Jake Benham. That's going to allow for him to get that little bit of extra speed down this straight. And he's got 19% in the battery, so he has to use that on this final lap. Can he get within that 1 second window? Surely Jake Benham acting like a roadblock for him at this point, and it's really going to be getting under his skin at this point. However, at the front of the order, Thomas Ronhaar now into this final sector, into the final part of this track, and it really just does not seem like luck goes his way around this circuit. However, he has proven to us he has the supreme pace in WOR. It doesn't look like Alvaro Caraton's gonna get that gap down. So with that 5-second time penalty applied, Thomas Ronhaar, despite coming in front around this circuit on track, he will be P2, which means returning to WOR. Your season 12 champion, Nicolas Longuet, is going to take the win here in Brazil. There it is. Alvaro Caraton, he was able... oh, my voice is going for some reason here. Alvaro Caraton has been able to get that gap down, and he takes P2.
Yeah, fantastic scenes there from Caraton. Ronhaar in third, Ido, Benham, Presneda, Smith, Parnell, Peracic, Pedreño. Top 10, Max Wiesel, I think dropped 5 places with all those penalties. Down to 12th place, so unlucky for him. Federer in 13th, Suriano in 14th, Donoso's AI. When we're saying some of these other drivers are unlucky, there's absolutely nothing Fabrizio could have done for that. Such a shame for him. Would have been 6th place, I think, in the end. No points for him. Bianca Lila and Will Lewis will be the final finishers, as they're having their own little battle for the final lap. Out of those that were involved in the fight for the win, though, we saw a lot of penalties. One man who didn't get any, Nicolas Longuet, and that is why he starts the season with a perfect 25 points.
Very nice indeed from him there. Nicolas Longuet taking victory on his return to WOR, the Season 12 champion, looking to become the first repeat victor on the PC platform, and he's done it in a very interesting fashion today. However, I think it is fair enough. He was able to keep Thomas Ronhaar in check throughout the entirety of this race. It is a well-deserved victory. When others made mistakes, he was able to come out on top, and he's going to be celebrating atop the podium. Alvaro Caraton with the DRS on Jake Benham was able to take on that P2, and Thomas Ronhaar down into third. However, he has got nothing to be upset about, I would say, because he has had an incredibly strong start to the season and a podium after taking that 5-second time penalty. Normally that would put drivers way down the order. He's got to be pleased about a P3 here.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly got the pace. It's just so frustrating what happened to him and a lot of the other drivers in the end. But, they made the mistakes. Longuet had the pace, didn't make the mistake. He takes the win. Caraton as well, managing to take that second place from... I don't think I've ever seen a Tier 1 race with so many speeding penalties, Dan.
No, absolutely. I mean, normally you do get a few, and I think that has got something to do with the esports line being a bit different. But it was outlined that they are allowed to cut that part of the circuit, so I'd say it is on them. Unfortunately, if they did end up getting that glitch where you're actually on the limit, however, they decide to, for some reason, just give you a penalty anyways. I think they definitely can contest that one there. So, we'll just have to see what the stewards say about this one here. I mean, realistically, there's going to be no fighting, and I think Nicolas Longuet, he is going to be confirmed our winner today.
Yeah, unless they can prove it's some glitch, unless they've got photographic video evidence that they are doing less than pit lane speed limit at the point that they hit the line. There's nothing they could do. They've just got to chalk it up to, it's one of those things. Get it out your mind, move on. It's in the past now. But yeah, there were some big winners from all those penalty situations. I mean, Presneda getting plenty of places, of course. We saw Caraton managing to make his way up into second. All of a sudden, Peracic, Smith, and the rest of that battle, they had so much fun. I mean, Ruben Pedreño just said in the chat, how did I finish P10 with a spin? He was way down the order at the start of the race, and he's managed to get 1 point. And who knows, in 13 races' time, just how important that point could be.
Absolutely, Rumbadrenia with a slow start to the season. I think he's going to be very happy with that P10 in the end, and hopefully we can get these drivers in for an interview. It's going to be Longay, Caraton, and Ronha. I don't believe we normally see Alvaro Caraton coming in for an interview if he does finish on the podium. However, we have heard from Longay and Ronha in the past, so I hope we can hear those guys in due course. But at the end of that one, certainly, Luke, this is looking to be a very close season of WOR racing. Thomas Ronha, at the moment, he seems to be the quickest man out there. However, we know that Nicholas Longay, he can keep him in check. I think if Ronha makes mistakes like that he did today, this championship could be wide open.
Yeah, and, you know, first couple of laps of this race reminded me of sort of Sebastian Vettel Red Bull era, where he just shot off into the distance and then you didn't see him for the rest of the race, and all of a sudden, you know, it was looking very good. Longay managed to get the gap back under a second and had to make some moves, let's not forget. Brilliant move, very opportunistic on lap number 1 after starting in 4th to get ahead of Caraton, then just had more pace than Josh Edo, and it will be interesting to hear if the Red Bull driver had any damage, because it was very strange how he was looking so good in qualifying, then all of a sudden in the race just couldn't quite make things work out how he did. Got back within a second of Ronha, didn't really go for the move at the end of the first stint. I think knew he could wait, and then once Ronhard got that 5-second penalty, didn't really have to do much, but again, closed that gap, got back within a second, so he showed some good pace, and it's a shame that Ronhard got that penalty, because I think that probably robbed us of what could have been a very intriguing battle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Longay probably knew that Ronhard wasn't going to be, he wasn't going to be getting that one removed, because I don't think it is the glitch. I think it is the form of what people have been saying, where they've been using the different lines. And I've actually seen in the Discord chat, in response to Ruben Pedreño saying, how did I finish P10 with a spin? Max Wiesel has come out and said, because none of us practiced the pit entry. So I think that might as well confirm it. I believe that and there's no MFD on the pit entry for Boel and Ferrer, so maybe they couldn't even track their speed. I'm lost at this point, I'd say.
Who knows? Who knows what's happened? We have just been informed by Jona Martins that we have got Nicholas Longay waiting for an interview, so hopefully we'll be able to drag him in and hear from our race winner.
Yes. Yes.
Nico, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Hello. So let's start this interview off. First of all, well done for your victory this evening. It was a very hard fought race, and I know that you deserve that one there.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was a flat out race. The whole race, it was push after push, lap after lap. It was just non-stop. Yeah, I'm very tired.
Of course, we'll start off by talking about your qualifying. It didn't really go your way, and you were just about maybe a tenth and a half off the back of Thomas Ronhard at that point. So tell us what happened there.
Yeah, no, I wasn't really. So I wasn't really prepared for quali as much as I would like to have been, but I mean the lap was going very well until I don't know. It may sound as an excuse, but I got a cramp on my foot during the lap, so that was very annoying to deal with. So maybe it didn't quite help me get a good lap in, but surely it was going to be hard to get pulled on Thomas anyway. I mean, P4 was still a alright place to start from and a place to get points, and the first few laps were actually very crucial when what happened with Josh losing the DRS and all that, but you guys saw what happened.
Yeah, of course, Josh Adobo, he didn't really have the best pace early on, and when you were able to get by on him on lap number 4, the gap was 1.7 seconds to Thomas Ronhard. Tell us how you went about closing that gap and being able to get back within his DRS.
Well, I knew Thomas pushed a lot in the first few laps, so I knew he was going to have less DRS than me. The moment, and then I saw Josh blinking, so I was like, okay, it's my time to pass Josh, and then it's my turn to push since I had more ERS than Thomas. And well, since I had more ERS than Thomas, I didn't have to use it all in one go. I could just slowly chip away at him. And after I don't remember how many laps was it, maybe like 5-6 laps, I got into the DRS, and from there on I just saved DRS behind them until the pits came. And all I wanted to do was pit just have the fresher tires for the end. So yeah, that was my strategy for the race.
Yeah, and of course, with the pit issues, a lot of drivers had. Do you know anything that's gone on with the amount of pit penalties we saw there?
Yeah, because in the esports, the pit entry is a tiny little different than in this build in this game. So it was actually a bit later in our version of the game. So I think people got caught off guard, remembering their old habits on where to brake for the pit entry. So I think that's what caught people out. But I knew that from already qualifying. When I was going back into the pits, I already noticed that the pit lane was just earlier than usual. So I just made sure I entered the pit lane very safely. I may have lost a couple tenths, maybe that's why I also was a bit far from Thomas. Because obviously, having sped, he also gained time on me. But yeah. That's why people.
I see. So yeah, that worked out in your favor. I mean, losing a few tenths in the pit lane is nothing when you'll be losing 5 seconds in a time penalty. So you played your cards absolutely perfectly, and you were able to take victory. So congratulations on this win today, and I hope that we can see you back in our commentary box later on in this season.
For sure. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good evening.
All right, and so that brings us our race winner, Nicholas Longue. But of course, we are joined by Thomas Ronhart at the moment, who finished P3 after that 5-second time penalty. And Luke, why don't you take us through an interview with Thomas?
Yeah, be delighted to. Congratulations, Thomas. Showed fantastic pace today. How much were you pushing in that final stint to try and get second place? Because it certainly looked at one bit that you'd managed to do it.
Yeah, first of all, GG to Nico and Alvaro as well. Great try from them. But yeah, as Nico said in the beginning, yeah, the pit entry was a bit different. I never really noticed it. But yeah, that was my mistake from my side. On the final stint, yeah, flat out 110% pushing all the way. Made one mistake in the last, I think it was the penultimate lap in the second sector, which lost me about half a second, which obviously made Alvaro get second place at the end. So I wasn't particularly happy with that, but yeah, it goes to show that one mistake you can lose crucial points in the championship. But yeah, it was a fun race.
Yeah, definitely a fun race. I mean, you showed fantastic pace, obviously, in qualifying, setting 2, absolutely blistering laps, and fantastic pace in the start of the race. Were you surprised that you were able to build that 1 second gap so comfortably in the first couple of laps?
Not really. I knew that I had great pace throughout this track in both quali and race. So yeah, I tried in the beginning to absolutely drain the battery and try and see if I can get out of the 1 second, which worked. I think Josh made a few mistakes, which obviously helped me get a gap, which was I think 1.7 seconds at some point. So from there on, I just managed my pace, my ERS, and yeah, obviously at the end it was a two-way fight with Nico. His pace was ridiculous as always. This is I think one of his best tracks, so I knew if Nico was going to get past Joyce, it was going to be very hard to keep him behind. But yeah, nevertheless, again, great race, and yeah, can't wait for the next one.
Yeah, next week it is Circuit of the Americas. Are you feeling confident heading into that one?
Yes, I think it showed in esports as well that both me and Nico again are going to be up there for sure. So yeah, round 2, get on.
Yeah, can't wait for that one. Congratulations,
Actually,
Thomas.
I have one thing to confess. I don't think I'll be here for the next race. I'm just not sure yet because I'll be in Poland. But I'm not sure when I come back to check.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. I'm not sure whether the rest of the grid will be sorry to hear that after the after
Well,
your victory.
Actually, yeah, no, I can confirm I'm not gonna be there because I come back on Tuesday and the race is on Sunday. So yeah, I'm afraid I can't make the second race. So yeah, I'll see you in the third one.
Yeah, so we'll see yourself and Nico in a couple of weeks, and Thomas, we might be seeing you again next week. Congratulations on the podium.
Thank you so much.
And that brings us, seeing as we just double check, we do not have Alvaro, that brings us to the end of the interviews, Dan, and to the end of, I'm sure you'll agree, it was a very exciting first race of the season.
Absolutely. It was very fun to watch, and I hope that the action can continue. As of course you mentioned, Circuit the Americas is where we are headed to next, and that is going to be a very exciting watch. That track always provides a lot of action. So I'm hoping, Luke, that we're going to see more races like this one in the future.
Yeah, and I can't think of any reason why not. You know, we might have a few different drivers making appearances. We've already heard that Nico's not going to be there. I think Tomek as well, he'll be missing. He perhaps didn't show the pace that he would have wanted, but did very well. Did very well to keep things nice and clean. And yeah, that's what all today was about. It just showed that little bit of extra practice, maybe realising that the speed limit line is, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if it's 2 or 3 meters difference, but they're pushing so hard, these drivers. That did make all the difference in the end, and that is why Nicolas Longuet took the victory in the first race of the season, but he's not going to have a chance to follow up from that. Thomas Ronhart is going to have a chance to redeem himself next week, and I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
Absolutely. I mean, we'll have to wait and see. January 22nd, we'll be heading to the circuit of the Americas for round number 2 of season 14, which is going to be setting us up for potentially one of the best seasons in WORPC Tier 1 history. Luke, do we have anything else to talk about this evening?
Well, if people want more WOR action, there is the rest of the tiers, I think, are starting later on this week as well, so you can make sure to check all those out. I believe it is the rest of the PC tiers are now actually on a Monday, and they used to follow ourselves, but they're on a Monday. Also around Brazil tomorrow for some of those, so make sure to check that out. And then we've got the console tiers with top tier mixed console action on a Friday, and judging by tonight, Brazil's going to provide brilliant racing across all of them.
Absolutely. So make sure you are subscribed to the WOR YouTube channel if you don't want to miss any of that action. It is the big red button beneath this stream. You cannot miss it, and whilst you're there, you might as well leave us a like, and then make sure as well to be caught up on all WOR news. You can join our Discord server. It is the link down in the description as well. Follow us on Twitter at WOR League, and if you want to follow myself and Luke, you can find us at DanFieldF1_ and at Luke Etheridge 95. It is right below our names. But from us, I believe that is everything. Thank you everyone for tuning in to this round number 1 of season 14. We will see you next week at the circuit of the Americas. Have a nice night, everyone. Goodbye.